Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The first off, can I remind members in the chamber and outside the chamber to make sure that their mobile phones are on silent. That any Alexas or Echo devices are disabled, so as not to disturb the meeting. If you are on speaking, please do unmute yourself and turn your microphone and turn your camera on. Sorry, turning your microphone on means the same thing. Other than that, I don't believe there are any other apologies other than from Councillor Alison Swaddling, who's attending virtually this evening. Correct? Okay. So if that's the case, then we'll go on to minutes of the previous meeting on page 5. So I'll quickly run through them. If anyone has any objections. Now, I believe there were some actions outstanding on these. Callum, what were they again?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So last meeting, a member raised about previous actions relating to the Community Safety Partnership. I'm still chasing them. The team is under a lot of pressure at the moment, but answers are being worked on. So the second I get them, I will circulate them. And there was another action to circulate some confidential information to members about how the council protects itself from cyberware and ransom attacks. Again, that is with officers and it is being produced. So again, I will send that. Other actions from the last meeting, the local elections information has been circulated. Broadband provision actions are still being sought from officers, and library service, those have also been circulated, except for the figures relating to smaller libraries, which officers are still trying to find out for me.
Okay, thank you, Callum. So going through the minutes, page, if anyone has got any questions, please indicate, or comments or corrections. Page 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. And 14. Okay, with no one raising anything, can I get a vote in favour that those minutes are accurate, and I will quickly sign them? All those in favour? Okay, is there anyone against the minutes? Any abstentions? Okay, Clive abstains, no problem. If that's the case, I'm just going to quickly sign them. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but it won't take me that long to put a signature on. Done. How's conversation? Alison, when you're not speaking, can you turn the camera off now that we've done the initial bits? Save on bandwidth. And okay, declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest? None indicated. Public question time. Any public questions submitted?
None submitted, Chair.
Okay. Member question time. Any member questions submitted?
None submitted, Chair.
Okie doke. So, so it begins once again. So the first item on the agenda is the medium-term financial plan. We're going to go through the overview. Thank you to everyone, both in the chamber tonight and outside the chamber, who attended the training a few weeks ago. Was it last week? Last Monday. Everything's blurring into one big mess for me at the moment, which I found was very useful. This is going to be entering into our 3rd year of doing this. So Graham and John are well prepared at this point, although I don't know if they are going to be receptive of that. The importance of this is basically, with the challenges that the council faces, we need to make sure that we are being the critical friend that we should be when looking at the budget and the budget setting process. Our role is to advise and guide, and if there is any areas of concern, we need to raise them during this process. This is where we can influence and assist what the finance team are doing, especially in this most challenging year. So I'll hand over to Graham and John Kaiser. Is that a fair enough assessment, Graham, or do you want me to do anything else as well?
Well, you don't want to send out any spoilers there, Guy. So yeah, probably best. That was a perfect introduction. And John Kaiser, do you want to say some words before I move into the presentation?
Really, yes. I mean, I think we say this every year, but I think this time it's probably more pertinent. We face some challenging times with what we're seeing with inflation, especially around construction costs, the cost of care home workers, and general inflation. On top of which, there are some concerns about how we're going to handle care, not next year, but the year after, when the caps are changed and removed in some cases on adult care. And of course, it's dependent on how much we can convince the NHS to passport through to councils to enable us to take that. But I think the other thing is that we set this budget in a context where we have never had, we haven't for some now, a 3-year settlement has turned into a 5-year settlement. So the last 2 years have just been a rerun of the previous 3s. This year, we are going to see a settlement, which I think will probably be a 3-year settlement. And of course, this is probably going to be one of the most important settlements that Wokingham Borough's ever seen in light of COVID and some of the changes that are going on around the place. So we explain these numbers and we present these numbers with that in the backdrop. I think it's quite important.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. And picking up on Guy's comments, this is the 3rd year, I believe, and the previous 2 years have really benefited from the questions and challenge and observations from the committee. So we hope we can continue in the same vein. This is the kind of setting the scene. I know there's not a whole host of detail to get behind at this stage, but the detail will follow. We're learning from lessons previously. We've improved, I believe we've improved the templates and the completion of those, and we're going to bring to this committee whole directorates in one go, as opposed to bringing the revenue and then the capital and the specials, and with the apparent disconnect that there can be between them, because there's interdependencies quite often. So I'll now move into the slide presentation, but I understand you have those available to you in the pack. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Graham. But it would be beneficial if you could put it on a slideshow so that those watching can see it. Not everyone's got it on YouTube.
No, I will do, Guy, and yeah, I was going to. I just wanted to check that you did have the pack. Okay, all right. So. All right, can you see that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Good. Okay. So this is what it says on the tin, the whole of the medium-term financial plan for the years 2022 to 25. And as I said, this is the contextual strategic overview, but it's a really important one. It won't be a surprise to you because we say it all the time, and it remains true. We are the lowest funded unitary authority per head of population. So that is an important setting for us to remember. John talked about the local government finance settlement that will be announced in December 2021. The tram lines for that will be announced in the autumn statement on the 27th of October. So that will give us some indication of the thinking that's going on at government level. For example, whether there might be an adult social care precept or not. But it won't tell you what Wokingham Borough Council receive financially. That will come out in December, and that's quite often pretty close to Christmas. John mentioned the tenure of the settlement. We believe that settlement will be 3 years in duration. I haven't heard any rhetoric to the alternative. However, we have been promised multi-year settlements in the previous years, and they've transpired to be single-year settlements because of all the other issues that have been needed to attended to at government level. This settlement, and I'll come to some of the reasons why, in addition, why this settlement is so important. First of all, it's a multi-year settlement. Secondly, some of the headlines going into this settlement were around needs, which Wokingham are perceived to be one of the lowest in terms of needs. It doesn't make it true, but it's just a calculation that puts Wokingham at the bottom of needs. And the other key headline in setting the scene for that settlement is resources. And Wokingham are considered to be very high in terms of resources because primarily we are seen to be high because our council tax collection and the amount that we receive from our residents is extremely high compared with others. Our dependency on council tax is about 90%. Some other authorities are nearer 30%, and therefore get so much more government grant than we do. So because we have so little government grant, we have to levy a lot in terms of council tax. And when the government introduced the council tax income into the consideration of resources, it puts us in quite a challenging position and sets the scene for us to do quite poorly out of a settlement. COVID-19, obviously we're well aware, big impacts last year. It's quite considerable impacts still this year, but we haven't put anything of great note in 22-23. There's a lot of, let's say, expectation that things will be getting back to normal. So we haven't put any significant consideration about the impact of COVID in beyond 22, 23 and beyond. Now, when I say that, of course, the demand that's been pushed into the system, mental health, care, etc., they will be included in 22, 23 as best as possible. But taking leisure, we're assuming leisure will be back. We're assuming car parking will be back, things like that. So it's generally a fairly positive disposition we're taking with regard to COVID beyond this year. Building back better, including the plan for health and social care. That's just a line, but that line is huge. So we don't know what the impact of building back better, levelling up, what levelling up really means, but we do fear that in levelling up it means resources will not be going to Wokingham. They'll be going elsewhere, and it's the extent to which we lose or miss opportunities as a result of that. The health and social care reforms are although obviously very welcome from a national perspective, it gives Wokingham Borough Council some huge challenges. It really kicks in from October 23, so that's part year effect in year 2. Nothing is yet factored in to the figures that you have in front of you in terms of the summary, on the basis that it will all be funded, the impacts will be funded centrally. However, the impacts could be absolutely astronomical for Wokingham, in particular Wokingham, and I'll give you two main strands behind that. One is we have a very large income from those who are self-funders or partial self-funders, and that income amounts to about £8.5 million per year. A large part of that £8.5 million will be under threat if self-funders are no longer required to contribute. Furthermore, because we have such a high incidence of self-funders in Wokingham, same is true of Windsor and Maidenhead. I suspect quite similar for West Berkshire, but less so for others in Berkshire, Reading, Slough, for example. But that's a good way of understanding the national picture. There will be those that have a much higher incidence of self-funders and those with much lower. And we think in some settings this can be up to 85% self-funders. The reason why I'm going on about this is linked to the single rate that will be charged by healthcare providers. And at the moment, local authorities pay a much lower rate than private payers, self-funders. And a healthcare setting will have to charge a single rate, so we'll at the minimum come to a weighted average, which will push all of our rates up. And that will have a particularly acute impact where we have such a high predominance of self-funders in the way that Wokingham do. Moving to children's services, getting to goods is still an overarching objective in that area, and of course the council's ambition, and the financial investment to do that remains in the budgets. We know that we have a lot of pressure around housing numbers, and that brings two key risks for us. One, it's about making sure we lever in the SIL and Section 106 required to build out those significant SDLs. And the other thing is the fact that they bring with them future service pressures, but we don't know what types of pressures, what degree of adult social care, children's services pressures are being brought in through an expanding population. Now, of course, on the upside, we'll get additional council tax, but just to put that into context, a single high-cost adult social care placement or high-cost children's placement is over £400,000 per annum each and every year until that person is no longer in the system. Obviously, the contribution through council tax pales into insignificance when compared with that type of pressure. The other thing I just want to stress, and John Kaiser strongly stated this in his introduction, this is very much a work in progress, and there are a huge amount of emerging risks. At the time we produced the summary position, the statement around health and adult social care hadn't been made, as an example. We know we've got huge gas bill pressures coming over the horizon. That's just been a recent development. And we know the pressures in the construction industry, building materials, is really starting to take effect as well. So it's very much a work in progress. However, along with all those challenges, we're looking to see what we can do to bridge the gap, seek efficiencies where we can, maybe passport growth to future years where possible. So reduce, curtail, postpone growth where we can, and expedite savings and introduce new savings where we can. And of course, all of this could change significantly depending on the impact of the local government finance settlement that we'll know in December, and the health and social care reforms that we may not know for another year or so, to be honest. This is the summary position, and this is at net growth. So this just shows you by directorate. These are the net growth positions coming through and their total over the next 3 years. This is the more pertinent slide because that then carries forward onto this slide here. We have the challenge from the previous years, and then we have inflation, council tax increase, council tax base increase, that then gives us our position at the very bottom, which means, and this is cumulative, so you could, this gives us, it says that we've got £1.9 million challenge over 1 year, or taking a 2-year perspective, we've got a £2.1 million challenge. So if we manage to address all of that in year 1, then year 2 pressure almost disappears altogether. As I, sorry, as I said before, this could change significantly as a result. Year 2, adult social care and health. Year 1 and year 2 could change as a result of the local government finance settlement. And year 3 is still being worked up. This gives you the summary of the special items. For those who aren't aware of the technicalities or the language around these, growth is are budgets that are put into the budget for a permanent basis, so like a staff salary that's always there, whereas special items are one-off pieces of work in order to get to a place, and then that stops. So I suppose an example would be bringing a consultant to do a specific piece of work. That would be a special item. Then that piece of work's finished and the consultant's no longer there. The growth is you need an extra member of staff for the long term, as far as you can see, and then that person's then baked into the budget, and that's growth. So that's the difference between growth and special items. Moving on to capital. So as I said, we're going to be bringing revenue and capital by each directorate to this committee, and this shows the capital program. So the total, counting anything reprofiled from previous years. Year 1 would have a total of 246 million. Year 2 total of 95 million. Year 3 total of 53 million, totaling 406 million over the 3-year period. And the detail behind all this will come through as we go through the directorates. And then we've got the funding set out below, arriving at the overall surplus or gap shortfall position. And as I said, I caveat this with the fact that building costs are rising quite starkly in some areas. So we've got to refresh our current, look at our current capital program, look at these 3 years to try to get a best assessment as we can of any significant changes in those budgets. And obviously, if there is a considerable uplift, that will impact on the gap at the bottom. But as it stands, year 1 is fully funded, and then we have a pressure in year 2, quite sizable, that we need to address. So very much the work on capital is trying to assess the impact of the inflationary pressures and trying to address that particular challenge in year 2 so that we create, as ideally, a 3-year balanced budget. Just moving to risks, I've covered some of these, so I won't dwell on them too long. We're assuming high levels of council tax and business rates collection. So like I said, that assumes the impact of COVID is not felt particularly strongly, 22, 23 beyond. 2 is a replication of that, but applies more generally. And obviously assumes we don't go into lockdowns next year, or 22, 23. We know we have some of the schemes coming to an end or have already just ended, and we have yet to fully understand the impact of those. We've talked at great length about the local government finance settlement. There continues to be the impact of Brexit and understanding that as the months and years go on. Talked about inflation and key grant streams. When I talked about the local government finance settlement, we've done very well out of the new homes bonus, and rightly so. We embraced the house building agenda, and we were receiving 5 million, 5.5 million per annum on new homes bonus. It's almost certain new homes bonus that scheme will end under a new local government finance settlement. So we need to watch out for where that goes, that money, where that funding goes. And there's rhetoric about changes to public health grant as well. And we know the challenges around SIL and Section 106, especially with the inflationary pressures that we talked about. I've mentioned health and social care reform, and it's probably worth saying that even in the figures you've got before you, and you see them in detail, particularly in resources and assets, we have put some quite challenging targets. There were some pretty challenging ones for this year. So particularly, for example, around some of our commercial ambitions, and we're going to have to look to see how deliverable the further increase is next year. So there are some pretty heady targets, let's say, already included in resources and assets, and like particularly resources and assets, and you'll get to see them in detail when they're presented. But they are proving to be quite challenging for a number of different reasons. It's not to do with current delivery isn't successful. It's to do with achieving future delivery as more and more shackles are put on us, and we become less and less positioned to be able to embrace some of the things we wanted to. So I won't go into detail on this. You've got the full version. This is just an abridged version. These are the templates, gross savings and specials, and they'll apply to everything over a de minimis threshold. And there you go, capital. Then just to remind you, so we'll be back again on 3rd of November, 24th, 13th, and 5th if we need to. I think we probably will, given how fluid this is and how big some of these moving parts can be, and potentially a TBC if we do need something beyond the 5th of January. But if all goes well, then we won't need to meet beyond the 13th. And there you are. So the main care service is 3rd of November, then the rest 24th. Then we will, I'm sure, need the 13th at least to do a mop up of everything. If nothing else, then bring the year 3 back. But I'm sure it will be really useful if we have the local government finance settlement by then as well. So that's our best assessment of a timetable. Clearly, we're in control of the first 3, maybe 4, and then we'll have to see if we need to factor any further in. So I'll stop at that stage if it's okay, Chairman. And shall I come off of presentation?
Yeah, I think it's best to come off presentation at this point. We've got the agenda items in our pack, so we can refer back to it from that point of view. Okay, I think I'll go to the floor to ask any questions. Alison, if you've got anything, put your hand up. I'll see it on the system. Okay, I can see 2 hands already. So Phil, please first, and then we'll go to Sam, Paul, and Clive. Check to see if anyone else. Phil, go ahead.
Thanks, Graham. Thank you for repeating again this exercise, as you have done, I've noted, over the last few weeks. But I was really thinking about the risks that you have laid out around SIL and S106. Why is there concern about them, and what's potential effect of them?
Okay, Chairman, do you want me to take all questions and come back on all, or each?
I think it's better to go from one person at a time, because otherwise we're going to be here all night.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Phil. Right. The initial major concern we had around SIL and Section 106. Well, sorry. First of all, if I can set the context. We have an approach, and I think it's a sensible and a necessary approach, to put the upfront funding in place for the roads, the roundabouts, to effectively unlock the development so that the builders can come in and we get development. So it's been our approach that we do quite a bit of forward funding investment to then enable the development to move ahead well and as speedily as possible. So that puts at risk because effectively we become the bankers, and then we get the money back later on, triggered through the Section 106 and SIL agreement based on thresholds of delivery in terms of numbers. Now, if the developer is struggling or hits hard times, starts to struggle, and we know that some have during COVID, and we still, there may be impact of Brexit, but certainly COVID, we saw some definite slowing down, and some companies struggle more than others. We then have a difficulty around either the loss of money altogether, so there's a risk that we lose the money altogether, or the time frame extends between the upfront investment and receiving the SIL and the Section 106. So that's something we always have to be aware of, and obviously with the types of money we're talking about, the volumes of money we're talking about, small elongations in that period can have quite significant financial effects. We have got reserves, a bridging loan fund, for example, reserve in place to cushion that and guard against that risk. But of course, if things go particularly badly, then obviously we're not ready for that. So that's one good example of SIL and 106. There's also, and I'm not exactly sure where this is right now, but there also was some rhetoric of centralisation, as in national centralisation of Section 106 and SIL. I think that's unlikely to happen now, but of course, planning policy and planning regulations can change, as we know, from time to time. So that was something else that we needed to be aware of.
Okay, thank you. Sam?
Thank you, Graham. I see the forecasted figures here for the budget for social care look quite sensible for 2023 and beyond. But in a worst case scenario, what could the cost be for social care in 23?
October 23 wouldn't be the worst case, because that would be that year would be a part year effect. But if we take some crude assessments of the impact of loss of income from self-funders and the huge inflationary impact of that equalisation to that single rate, I think there will be a further pressure around the fact that if the NHS is so much better funded, then its ability to undertake its work and effectively, therefore, its throughput enhances, and the throughput means that the adult social care system will have more clients to look after. Let's say if there was no funding available at all for us, we think this could be of the magnitude of £20 million. It's
Thank you,
massive.
Graham.
Okay.
On that somber note, Paul. Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham and John, for your introductions. Really, really helpful, I think. It's good to hear that the revenue and capital will be brought as directorates together. I think that will be really helpful this time, rather than the mishmash that has come in previous years, and then trying to link the two together. So that's really, really helpful. You seem to imply that authorities that are good at collecting their council tax are then penalised by government, because local authorities that are not very good get rewarded. I've got some other questions, if I may. On page 16, it implies the settlement's expected to be a 3-year period. When you mentioned that, and so did John, how confident are you that that will be for 3 years? And if WBC are treated poorly again by government, as they have been recently, and you do get a 3-year settlement, how can that be amended, tackled to get an improvement 2 years in, 3 years in? Shall I go on? I have some more.
Let's take those first three, as it were, and then we'll come back, I think, from that point of view. So, Graham, John, I noticed you both went on camera. So,
Okay,
fire away.
It's probably best if John Kaiser answers those who perform get penalised and those who don't get rewarded, because obviously that's more political, so it wouldn't be for me to comment on. I don't know, John, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, you are right. I mean, say if you look at some of the grants we've got, for instance, for moving bed blockers out of the hospital, we're very good at it. So we get a very small grant. Reading are useless at it, so they get a very big grant. You could argue that that's rewarding inefficiencies or poor performance. But you could also argue in the round that as they can't do it, they need the money. That doesn't go to the centre of whether they're spending the money sensibly or not. But I guess if you spoke to somebody from central government, they would say, well, you guys do it well, you don't need the money. Those guys do it badly, they do need the money. So unlike working in your normal business where shareholders and or you want to call resident shareholders will be rewarded because we ran the business properly, in this case it's a bit like Slough. I mean, nobody's ever going to step up and give us £100 million, but it's quite possible at some stage somebody may do that at Slough. So yes, you're right. But I do caveat by saying if you forget about the performance aspect of it, if a council's doing something badly, the only way the government can change it is to give them more money and hope that they do it well.
Okay, so I guess my just from an officer's perspective is we just need to be very alive to the levelling up agenda and the impact that might have for Wokingham, especially when Wokingham are seen to be of low need and high resource, and therefore we don't tick the boxes that seems to attract the funding, and that's why we're the lowest funded unitary authority. Moving on to the other 2 points, will it be a 3-year settlement? I would say I'm I'll go 62% certain that it will be a 3-year settlement. So I'm more confident than not, but I have the rhetoric has and the intention has previously been in the last years that it would be a multi-year settlement, and it's turned out not to be. However, in the previous years, I think the preoccupation has been Brexit and COVID, and therefore that hasn't left enough space to properly attend to a multi-year settlement. But it's not as if this year isn't without its challenges either. So there is still a risk. It may not be a multi-year settlement, but I'm more confident than not that it will be. If it is a 3-year settlement, you make a good point, Paul. What can you do to affect change? It's not unheard of for representations to be made throughout the period of the settlement, and for those to be heard and adjustments to be made. And I give you a fantastic example that Wokingham led, actually were one of the leading lights on this. And we were one of the leading lights by necessity, because we were impacted worse in terms of percentage than any other country, any other council in the country. And that was to reverse the intention for negative revenue support grant. So it was our campaigning through our MPs, etc., that we did manage to get the case across that the negative RSD should not be imposed, and that did change throughout the course of the settlement. So I'd say it's not common to get changes throughout a multi-year settlement, but it is possible.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Paul, you mentioned you had a few more, and Alison, I have seen your hand on the system, so I'll come to you in a bit.
I do. Thank you. On page 23, contractual inflation includes the NJC pay award, just over 6 million, and then just under 11 million cumulative additional quoted. Does this include all direct and indirectly employed staff?
Yeah, the inflation provision that we put into that page will cover all of the directly employed staff and where we think our best estimate of contractual inflation. So yes, all inflation is intended to be covered.
You just started to go on to my second question, actually, which was what percentage of allowance have you used for the NJC?
Oh, okay. So this is the employed staff under the national agreement, the national joint agreement. So we hadn't put any budget in for this year. We put in 0 effectively for pay award, although we're pretty sure there will be one. And I know, although it hasn't been concluded, but the figure 1.75 has been mentioned. So we need to cover for that next year, and we've put in a further 1% as well. So the figure we've got in for year 1, 22-23, to cover off the impact on this year flowing into next year, and then a further addition is currently 2.75%.
Seems logical to me. Paul, one more, and then we'll go to other people around, and we'll come back.
Again, on page 23, you've got a line there for additional council tax. Year 2 is 1.5%, and year 1 is 2.25%. Why is there a difference?
Okay, this is quite a tricky line to address, because it's based on a statutory calculation, and that statutory calculation looks ahead, so includes forecasts of all sorts of voids and new builds and all sorts, as well as catches up from the previous year as well, and it's quite complex, and it's forecasting as well. So so I try to be fairly cautious because of the complexity of it and the fluidity of it. And what I've done by putting in 2.25, I have increasing confidence that we're okay with our previous year's assessment, and that it's safe to push that a little bit higher. So if you look back to the previous one, the previous tax base provided for, you'll find that would have been lower. So I guess what I'm saying, I think it's risky to bring in anything more than 1.5 unless I have confidence that we're moving well against our previous estimate. So I guess that's what I'm sorry. It's quite a bad answer, but it's quite a complicated issue. So I'd say the reason is, as we look beyond, it's more speculative, and I don't have the confidence to put anything higher than 1.5%. But of course, I'll review that as I get to this point next year.
Which makes sense, Graham, because I think if we'd asked you to, when we first started this process in 2018, about how many houses would be built in 2020, I think we would have been horribly wrong. So I think it's a fair assessment. Clive, and then we will go to Alison on the Teams because I saw her hand, and then we'll go to Shirley. Oh, and Sam back again. Okay.
Thank you very much, Guy, and thank you, John and Graham, for your presentations. This is the third one that I'm going to be sitting through, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 or 5 meetings when we'll have lots of questions for you and for your colleagues. But I'll just ask you to bear in mind all the time that we are doing our job of overview and scrutiny. We're not making political points. We're just looking at the budget as you present it to us, and making sure that it is a sound budget. And that's the approach that certainly Paul and I are going to be taking, and the approach we've taken over the past 3 years. So my first question is on page 16, where we're talking about making representations to the government to get a fair funding settlement. So this is really a question for you, John, and it's sort of who exactly are we talking to? Are we able to get to any senior people in the Chancellor's office, or are we able to get to the Chief Secretary, Financial Secretary? Are we able to get to Michael Gove to find out what he wants to do about housing numbers? And is Charles Margetts able to get to his minister to talk about adult social care? Because we can't go for any more money for the adult social care precept, because quite rightly we took it all last year and the year before, so we can't take any this year. But is there any possibility of us having a conversation with that department just to see if we can get any more? I'll come back with a couple of other questions. So give you a chance to come back.
I think the important thing is, Clive, is to understand that we've already embarked upon this. In fact, I tackled John Redwood quite publicly about it at a meeting on Saturday. I've written to him, laying out the points that Graham has clearly laid out to you. The good, the bad and the ugly, basically, and we will be doing that, and John will be doing that to all our MPs. Some are more active than others, but we'll be writing to all our MPs, explaining the situation in fairly easy to understand language and asking them to lobby the Minister on our behalf. We will also, there's a second stage to that, and the second stage will very much be about us writing to Michael Gove. As you know, he's new to the job. I don't know how many ministers we've had in that role so far, but he's new to the job, and we will be writing to him, not necessarily pleading our case, but actually trying to get him to see sense that our costs in Wokingham, in some cases, exceed the cost in areas of more deprivation. So we're very much on this case. It's about providing the correct level of service, but at the same time, and levelling up is something that people are talking about. I made it very clear and quite emotive language that we hope that it would be a tragedy. In fact, I've said it would be a tragedy if Wokingham residents were sacrificed on the altar of levelling up, because we've done a good job and we want to continue to do a good job, and so in a lot of cases it's difficult to understand what levelling up means, and when you're at the top of the tree it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more. If we got the same size pie, I guess it does mean that we could possibly get less, but we are on the case, Clive. I mean, this budget probably contains aspects that we cannot control, and the numbers are so big. When you hear about £5 million for new homes bonuses, £20 million the wrong way if care, we as a council, and we're not alone in this, we as a council, they are very difficult for us to contemplate and to deal with those numbers. So we would be very delicate, we would be very we wouldn't be doing what we should be doing for residents if we weren't highlighting these things, and we're very much on the case. Seal's a classic example. There's a white paper. We don't know where that's going to land. As Graham said, there was some discussions around putting it all in a great big pot and dishing it out. Well, that's fine and dandy, but we do have a strategic plan in the borough, and for that strategic plan to work, Seal and 106 that we're expecting must come through. Otherwise, the plan doesn't work. It's as simple as that, Clive.
Thanks, John. It is good to hear that our local MPs are going to be trying to help, especially as one of them's former Prime Minister, the other one's a former Cabinet Minister, so they got access to the right people. But I'm just wondering if we should be trying to get in there ourselves and not going through somebody else. But maybe that is just something for you to consider.
I would say that at least one of our Prime Ministers has an excellent relationship with the new minister. In fact, he was in her cabinet and was a trusted minister as far as she was concerned. So if you like, we do have a foot in the door there.
Yeah. Okay. Moving to page 24. I guess we're going to see the detailed calculations behind all of these numbers, and I would say that we're probably going to see them 1 week before each of the next 4 or 5 meetings, whatever they are. Is there, I know you're going to be under lots of time pressures, Graham, but is there any chance of seeing them a little bit sooner than that?
I don't have a problem with that, and I think we're reasonably well progressed. So I mean, I'll defer to Callum in terms of what the cadence of things are, but I don't think that's unreasonable for us to be able to get something out earlier. I'll have to get back to the ranch and see what's doable, but I've got no problem with that if that's agreeable to this committee.
I mean, personally, thank you, Graham, if that's the case. I know it's down to the individual directorates as well. But what we could do is if they are ready ahead of publication time for the agenda, basically send out a draft copy over email so that we've basically got them for perusal ahead of the official copy. And if there are changes between what we see as the draft and what is published in the public domain, so be it. But I think it is more beneficial for us to give a few, even if it's a few extra days to review things. So if that is possible, let's go ahead and do it. If it's not, or if one of us then spots something, we're just helping as part of the overview and scrutiny process. Because if we suddenly notice there's a typo, we're spending 1 million instead of 10 million where we should be or something, that's all well and good. So yeah, we can take that approach if required.
Okay, thanks, Guy. I'll just say one of probably the areas where we'll struggle most is getting the templates well crafted, sufficiently completed. So if you just bear that in mind, that's where the key pressure will be, is completing those fairly comprehensive templates that are in your pack.
Okay, thank you very much. And going on to page, I think it is 26. Yeah, 26. The line at the bottom says the funding gap will be addressed through reducing scheme costs, seeking additional income and reprofiling to later years. So we've got to find savings roughly of 4.5% over these few years, so that this page balances. How realistic do you think that is?
Well, ultimately, it's got to be done. So it is wholly realistic because we can't set unbalanced budgets. So it will be done. I think the question will be how much pain is involved, how many sacrifices are required to get there. But I'm working on a daily. I've had some really good conversations even today about how we can maybe bring in additional sources of income, questioning some schemes in terms of the immediacy of delivery, all those. So yes, it will have to be done. It's just when. We have to have a balanced year 1. Ideally, I want a balanced year 2 and 3 right now. But this time next year, that year 2 will have to be balanced. We don't set unfunded capital schemes. So how realistic is totally realistic, because it has to be done, is always the question of how difficult it is to do.
To give you a bit of confidence, we've had this before and we've achieved the budget, and it really hasn't caused us too many problems. We haven't had the issues that we've got around inflation, costs of construction, costs of labour, and so on and so forth that we've got, which has come out of COVID. But we have reduced this. We've already started to reduce it. I think we reduced it by about £9 million, haven't we, Graham, over the last 2 to 3 weeks? But I think the important thing to understand, Clive, is we will achieve it, and that may bring on some pain, but we have no option. And we just need to be sure that when we do the stuff that if we do reprofile, or with stuff that we decide is not necessary, that stuff has a minimum amount of impact on the services and the residents.
Clive, I'm just going to come in here with the chairman's prerogative, because this is actually a very good point where I wanted to make a question, because on page 23, it's saying that we were going to have a surplus of about 270. I clearly have been looking at different budget lines recently because I wanted to say 270 million. That was not correct. 270,000, I presume. The question is basically the confidence on that number, Graham, because when we were doing this budget setting last year and going through this process, we needed to save 4.6 million across the board, if my memory is correct, from the and that was in the MTFP. We were originally talking about 5.9 or something like that when we first had this meeting a year ago.
Can I just say to you, Guy,
Yep.
we were talking about capital programme. We weren't talking about the revenue. Just make it clear, so you understand the difference. I know you understand the difference, but the slides are together, but one is revenue and the other one's capital.
Yeah, it just occurred to me though when the savings gap was commented, and
Okay.
it just occurred to me on that from the revenue point of view. We've made a saving of 4.6 million last year's one. So does that mean are you confident on that budget gap surplus as things stand from that point of view?
Well, all I can really say, these are always the best estimates we have at the point in time. And when we talk about savings, we have to try to reach a fine balance. So a saving has to be realistic, but also it has to be challenging as well, because we haven't got the luxury of people not wanting to get involved in being as efficient and effective as we can be. It's an absolute necessity that we must do. That adds real work and pressure to the day job. Sometimes it's wholly mutually beneficial to pursue cost reductions and enhance quality of life. For example, early intervention prevention. Sometimes seeking new lines of income or savings adds work and pressures, but I need to foster an environment, as does John, as do we all really, to try to encourage people to be the best they can in terms of generating income, reducing costs, and putting themselves under that pressure. But it has to be realistic. I have assurances that it's realistic and it's deliverable in terms of what's presented, but obviously only time will tell as we go through next year and see its delivery. What I would say is, in terms of the challenge that we have at the bottom line, the £2 million on revenue, that is a pretty tall order because there's already a lot of challenging things in there. However, we have in the past, and I'm saying this is the answer, we have in the past used general fund balances to a larger extent than that to deal with a pressure that couldn't be addressed at the bottom line. But obviously that's by far our plan A. We're doing all we can to smooth that, possibly over 2 years or even 3 years, even better, to address it directly so it's not there altogether. I think the big issue, well, it is the big issue, where our bottom line is, almost in spite or despite all the work that we do, will be massively impacted by the outcome of the local government funding settlement.
Okay, thank you for that, Graham. Clive, back to you.
Thank you, Guy. On page 27, you've got some risks for revenue and capital, and I'm particularly interested in the impact of Brexit. So what further impacts of Brexit do you think are going to happen, and how will that affect the council? How does it affect the budget?
Well, from my perspective, I think it's flagging it. It's an unknown, isn't it? And a big risk around budgeting and setting safe budgets and budgets that you can have a great confidence in is what are the knowns and the unknowns, what's the likely variables. So some of the likely variables could be interest rates, could be a variable. We've got the wages and being able to attract certain types of staff, the potential impact on that. Could be in the supply chain impacts. We've seen some, there could be more. Is flagging it as here's an area of potential unknown and we need to be aware of what they could be. I think we know, you know, what I've said there. I don't think will be a surprise to anyone because these are in the press, aren't they? That's in the rhetoric of impact on inflation, impact on availability of workforce and supply chain.
Yeah, I do think the important thing is no matter where you might think some of these come from, where they are what they are, and trying to be completely sort of is all we can do is mirror what we think is going to happen in the marketplace. And of course we will take soundings and advice from various experts when we look at things, make predictions on interest rates and predictions on increase in inflation, both goods and people costs. So wherever they come from and whyever they come from is a moot point as far as we are concerned. When we're setting the budget, we're just trying to reflect what's going on and what people think will be happening in the next 2 years.
I think you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to predict what labour costs are going to be over the next year or so. It's very difficult to predict what the cost of materials are, building materials, because they're going through the roof at the moment. But what sort of percentage increases have you put in for inflation, for materials and for labour and for utilities?
Well, I think again, I mean, what we're trying to do is reflect what we see today. Whether or not that's sustainable, we are seeing increases in building materials and building materials specifically, anything up to 35% for lumber. Bricks are a challenge. I mean, all those things feed through to the bottom line of any capital program we're putting together, because much like any developer, we use that equipment, and of course then on top of that you've got staff and the increase in staff. Now it's a really difficult one, isn't it? I mean, say some would argue for years the staff, there's been subsidised wages for one reason or another, and maybe a proper working wage for most people is a good aspiration. But what that's likely to be, I don't know whether lorry drivers should earn 50 grand a year or 15 grand a year, to be quite honest with you. But all we can do is deal with what we've got at the moment and make assumptions. And of course you've heard tonight from Graham the assumption that it could cost us £20 million. So we're not shirking away from what those costs could possibly be, but you could not set a budget on that basis, Clive.
Oh no, no, I absolutely agree, and I thought it was very telling when you told us earlier on that because that answered one of the questions that I had, that it could cost £20 million, but that might not be until 2023. And you couldn't be budgeting for that now.
Yeah, just to clarify on two aspects there. Your first question about what we have in for the likes of gas and building inflation, a very modest amount is the answer. It was the amount that we put in before the recent escalating rises. So I'm expecting to come back to you to say we've had to upgrade our figures, uplift our figures. So that's a work in progress at the moment. The inflationary impact on gas and construction. We produced this at a point in time, and it didn't include those severe increases. On the other point you made about when we talked about the 20 million, just to be clear about the timing, that couldn't happen until 20, in terms of that enormity, would be 24-25 would be the first year, because October 23 is its first point of impact.
Okay, thanks very much.
One more, Clive, and then we're going to go around to other people.
One more, Guy. Thank you. You talk about significant savings targets are going to be built into budget assumptions. So are you able to give us a flavour of your significant savings targets? Are they 1%, 2%, 5%? I assume that it's probably different over different directorates, and I guess we're going to be seeing that in the detail. If we're not at the moment, could we? Because I think it's very important, as it was last year, that we challenge you over whether the assumptions of savings can actually be made.
Yeah.
And it would be nice when we have the next few meetings to know what we were predicting as a saving for a different service, whether it actually happened or not, whether we achieved the savings that we expected to, or whether we just missed, or whether we did a lot better.
Okay, yes, thanks, Harvey. I think it's yes, and yes to all those things. Right, but I think it started with I believe, a misunderstanding. When I said savings target, this isn't like here's a 1% target for adult social care, children's 2% for place and growth. It's not that at all. It's within resources and assets. There are some sizable lines, and they're the same lines you would have seen in this year's budget. So I'll give you an example. There's a line for commercialisation, a line for procurement, as in making cost reduction against procurement, a line for office rationalisation, making savings through that, a line for income from commercial activities. So I think they're most of them, and they had sizable savings targets this year, some of which have been achieved pretty well, others not so. And then there was a further, in that horizon that you would have seen, the 3-year MTFP, there was a further increase for 22-23. Now I'm saying that some of those I'm thinking are more challenging than I initially thought, because of some of the changes to the landscape, which includes, for example, changes to the regulations around Public Works Loan Board and being able to access that, and for the reasons it can be used, and inflationary pressures, for example, in construction, makes some of the achievement harder. So it's specific lines that feature under resource and assets, not general savings lumped in against other directorates, and each of those lines will be disclosed to you with an accompanying business case in the same way they were last year.
I know I wasn't supposed to have another question, but you just mentioned something there about the Public Loan Works Board, and I always thought that if you wanted a loan from them, it was relatively easy to get, provided you had a business case. It was pretty easy to get. Has that changed?
Yes, there's been new, and you're right, we'll probably rerun this again when we do resources and assets. But yes, there's been new regulations which has reduced the ability to borrow to invest. And all these restrictions, and our response was laid out in our paper to executive in the last 3 or 4 months called Investing in Our Communities. So it's in the public domain, even from a Wokingham perspective, and it stops. For example, the obvious thing it stops now is borrowing to then buy properties outside the borough, for example. So there's more constraints on our borrowing.
If I could just, I've had this conversation with Graham, funny enough, earlier on, I think yesterday, Clive, to the way the council account, they are savings. If you were a company, you'd probably show them as additional income. So what we're not doing is we're not saying, well, we're going to cut 10% off of this department or 10% off that department. We're saying that we're making these savings because the additional income comes in to actually supplement those services.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's been incumbent on us to seek new forms of income, and some of these new forms of income are more problematic now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go to Shirley, and then we'll go to Alison, and then I've got a few, and then we'll move on. We'll go to Sam again, lovely, and then Paul. Yeah, we'll go around.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Graham and John. I only got one question actually, and it's to do with the assumed rate of collection of council tax and business rates at 99%. I've got two questions really. One is, what is the current collection rate of each, and how far would that collection rate have to fall before it had a significant impact on council services, and how much further would it have to fall before it had a catastrophic effect on council services? I'm kind of just thinking that an awful lot of people who are our council taxpayers particularly are going to be in the category of just about managing at the moment, but with the increase in national insurance costs, fuel costs, food costs, everything, a lot of those people are going to be struggling. And we know that council tax is one of the first things that people stop paying when they're really struggling.
Okay, thanks, Shirley. Right, first of all, the council tax and business rates last full year, so year ending March 21, was council tax was 99.1. I think, and business rates was either 99 or just a 0.1 or 0.2 below. So at 99 or 99.1. And this year we're looking on the same trajectory. So there's no indication at the moment that they're unrealistic or unsafe assumptions. The impact of 1% loss in council tax is about £1.2 million. So every percent really matters. So we have to get it right in terms of ensuring those who can pay do pay, and obviously whilst being compassionate and recognise that some people are going through difficult times, and sometimes for the first time. Yes, because every £1.2 million taken from our budget will have a big impact, because we're going to find it tough to balance, find the other 2 million that I've already shown in the shortfall. So I suppose in some ways, I guess, Shirley, it's about, in some way, over to you to do your own maths and what you think that might mean. So we lose 1%, that's 1.2. Obviously we lost 10, that's 12 million. We don't have an awful lot of let's say slack. It will impact. How it will impact, I don't know. We'd have to look at that and see what the options are to address 1.2 million shortfall, 2.4 million shortfall, but it will have an impact on the community without a doubt.
I think the other thing is, that's quite important about this. Last year we did extend the council tax discount to certain bodies, care workers, and people leaving council care. We've extended that. But the other thing is that we've also signed the CAB protocol with regards to how we recover. And I think that rather than run at people not paying like a bull at a china shop, we've been very good about coming up with schemes and plans and working with people and working with the CAB and not just helping them pay their council tax, which is obviously important to us, but help them not, or try to help them avoid getting themselves into debt in general. And I think that that's something that we need to continue, because it does pay dividends. There's no question about that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Alison, you indicated earlier.
Yes, thank you, Guy. We heard the Prime Minister speak today at the end of Conservative conference, which I only just got back from, hence not joining you in chamber. Speak about levelling up. Graham, John, what do you think that will mean for Wokingham?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, I believe everybody should earn a decent wage. I believe everybody should have equal opportunity wherever they live in the country. Some would argue that's not always been the case, but the trouble is, when you're at the top of the poll, it's a bit difficult to level up any higher than that, isn't it? And I think that Wokingham is probably, we saw not so long ago somebody saying, and I don't know how it was based or what they're saying, we're the most prosperous borough in the council. So I guess that the levelling up, the levelling up policy or is something that we've got to keep a very close eye on. I mean, I'm very much in favour of it, but I'm not in favour at the expense of the residents of Wokingham or I mean, RSG, negative RSG is the classic example. We, as you know, some years ago, we bought our council homes, and the reason we bought our council homes was we couldn't maintain them because half of the money was being taken from us and sent to other councils, and I'm sure they were quite worthy councils who needed the money, so we bought those council houses to retain all that money so we could get our council houses to the decency standards we find them today. So it's a great ambition, but I'm not quite sure how it plays with us, to be quite honest with you.
Thanks for that, John. Thank you, Guy.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to ask a couple of quick questions because this has been a project that I've been effectively working on for 3 years with this process sitting in this chair. Now, the first aspect of this is in regards to the amount that we're spending on statutory versus non-statutory services. Now, my recollection is that we're spending between 100 and 110 million a year on statutory services out of our 130 million pound budget, which under my quick calculations, that's about 79 to 82-ish% is statutory versus non-statutory. How much, Graham and John, do you reckon that we might be creeping up on that percentage to statutory versus non-statutory going forward? And is there any risk to the non-statutory services, especially given the challenges that we're facing going forward in the next few years with the potential risk of that 20 million snowball potentially coming down the hill in about 3 years' time?
I think, Guy, I think the issue is that statutory are just what they say, which is statutory. What we've tried to do with the non-statutory services is to make them so they're self-financing. So, for instance, if you look at what the amount of money that we put into leisure, you look at our leisure centres and you look at what we've done with Dinton and Californian, but that has meant that there has been some charges, some increase in car parking charges, some increases in charges for people wanting to use those, because by doing it that way, it doesn't impinge on the budget in the same way as the statutory stuff does. So I think we've always invested to save, or the invest to save is, if you like, invest to give us back an income to help pay for that. I mean, I guess a classic case in point is the town centre. I mean, the town centre, as we motor on and it's more and more successful, it pays more and more back in, so it becomes not just self-financing, but it produces income which we can use to pay for services, both statutory and non-statutory.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have the specific answers, Guy, to the question. It's quite a complex one, to be honest, but I would say in our general principle, and I'm saying this is an absolute, but it's where we have increasingly where we have discretionary, they pay for themselves in the way John described there. So effectively, all you're left with once you've reached the end of that journey is the only thing generating a net cost is statutory services. So you're talking about degrees of delivery against statutory service. So just because something's statutory doesn't mean you can't do something with it. But yeah, more and more would fall under that badge of statutory.
Okay, thank you. That's the reassurance that I was seeking in that. And apologies, it was slightly technical. It's just the way that my brain works when I look at these numbers. Okay, so the other aspect is it's also it's actually a bit of a note of thanks, because when we did this process last year, when I went back and actually looked at the original documentation from this meeting last year, the numbers for the numbers equivalent on page 23, that 1.9 million net that we're talking about here, the number that we had last year for 2 years out, as it were, was about 4.4 million. So we're already in a much better position than we are now, and we also had to deal with about a 3.5 million overspend due to the COVID challenges that we had. So considering the challenges that you have, Graham and John, and this council as a whole and everyone within it, the work that has been done has been absolutely outstanding in the fact that we are not sitting here with numbers that are substantially concerning at the moment compared to where we had it this time last year. Is a credit to everyone in this council, personally, and especially and we last year we had concerns because of these numbers, and you were challenged and you rose up to that challenge. So I'd just like to thank you for that, because I did go and look back at everything, and everyone has done a good job personally. Yeah, there are more challenges to come, but I think we're in a much better position, especially doing this process as a council, than we would have been if we hadn't been doing that. I just wanted to say that from my point of view, and then we can go around to all the other difficult questions from everyone else. But if you do have any comments on that, please do come back to it now.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. I mean, I would compare with, and we need to be a bit careful when we do this, but we'll compare with other authorities that may be facing massively bigger gaps than us, but we don't want to be penalised for working so hard to create a manageable gap. So there is always that tension there, but I would say, yeah, I'm sure there are many other CFOs around the country that would like to be in my position. The other point that I would like to say is totally to stress build on what you were saying and stress the point is financial management is a collective council-wide responsibility. If it's perceived to sit with one person or some few people, then it's working badly and we have a completely wrong understanding of it. It only works when the whole council takes it seriously and undertakes their part in it, which includes councillors and officers across all directorates and working in all levels. So yeah, absolutely, it's about our collective effort that makes us strong, and it's only through our collective effort that we will stay strong.
Okay, thank you for that. Sam indicated, and then we'll go back to Paul and Clive. Did anyone else want to speak on that? Put your hand up now. Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. Do you see delays in delivering the capital programme due to increased costs? And my second question, which I'll just say now, is can you tell me how you see the future of the investment programme? I think this was really successful in previous years, but how do you see the future of this?
Do you want me to start, John?
Yes, great.
Okay. I think it is wise where we can right now in the context of escalating prices, which could well be a blip, that we pause where we can and it doesn't have a unpalatable consequence for our residents. So I think it's just sensible way to go about our business. So I think I can't give, it would depend on the circumstances, but I would just say as a principle, if we can pause, if it's something in this year or partially pause, and even buy some time in terms of how we phase the next 3 years, I think that will be sensible. So as long as it doesn't generate unpalatable consequences, as I said.
Yeah, I think just on that first bit, Sam, I think it's important that we are robust enough to challenge projects, and if we're confident that if we do find ourselves in a position that they're difficult to complete within the time frame, we review that, and part of that review would very much be, as Graham's just said, the social impact of anything we do. Not just the financial, but the social impact of whatever we may do. And there are stuff that that we would like to do, that we plan to do, which may or may not have an immediate or short-term impact on services we provide. And I think if that's the case, they will be the projects that will be considered in the first round if we do find ourselves that we can't do that. But I think pausing is a good idea. Obviously we can't, where we're committed to deliver something, where we're halfway, you can't pause a road halfway through, you can't pause a development halfway through. I mean, say, but there are things that we may not have started yet, and there may be ways of doing those things in a more cost-effective way.
Just picking on the second part of the question is around what used to is our £200 million available for investment in the community, which initially had a more narrow focus on, for example, we bought some food stores in terms of the buildings around the borough, and that generated some really good returns on those acquisitions. So they were good, they were strong, and we used our permissions that we had at the time under the PWLB regulations that were present then. And we publish all of our acquisitions and their return, and we update that on a quarterly basis. There are new regulations, and we spent up to about £85 million. So we were working our way through the 200 million approval. We now have a change in the PWLB regulations that will make some of our previous approaches more difficult. And also we're facing, so one of our major redirections that we talked about last year, actually at this meeting, was to focus on housing. So you might have heard what's called the 145 strategy. So for us to deliver through Woking Borough Council 1,000 houses over 4 years, making 5%. And to meet the affordable housing agenda where we can on that. Now, that takes more time because it's not an asset already built. It's often the fact we have to develop ourselves. And also we're now faced with increasing building costs and construction costs and supply in the way that we've already described. So what started off as a really good positive steps in that direction to generate new income lines to fund our statutory services, we're now finding that increasingly difficult to deliver. I don't know exactly how confident I feel about that at this stage because we're looking at all the pipelines. And there's something, for example, what else we could do? We could do the housing, but we could also, for example, use that to build another solar farm, for example, if that made a sufficient return. So that's just another example, or who knows, if we bought a care home that made sense and that made a return, then we could do that. So but it's not as easy as it previously was to utilize that 200 million and make the return in the way that we were doing, and we're doing very successfully.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come back with my additional questions. I did have two, but Shirley's actually asked one of those. But I was going to say as well, congratulations on achieving the 99% collection of council tax and business rates. That's a fantastic achievement. I'd also like to applaud the protocol you've got with CAB on council tax collection and not going in too heavy-handed for residents who had difficulty paying. So I think that's to be applauded. You mentioned budget templates earlier, and you've got those listed as well. Last year, I recall we had some difficulties with some of these templates. Some of them had wrong information in. It'd been copied and pasted wrongly in some cases. And in other cases, there was very little detail, or in some cases, no details. So would the executive member and yourself, Graham, please ensure that all relevant boxes are actually completed before they come to this committee so we can scrutinise them properly? Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for your comments about the council tax collection. The team that collected council tax, I think, did an immense piece of work, not just about getting the money in, but taking a very considered, empathetic approach, using the protocol, helping people who are in trouble, and creating all sorts of reprofiling on their repayment plans where there was genuine hardship, and despite for them moving to a very considerate approach, which wouldn't have been the normal state of affairs, but obviously wholly required during a pandemic, I think they managed to balance those two very difficult, ensuring we get the money in to pay for our vital services whilst listening and doing what we can for those who are generally struggling. I think that was immense, the work that they did there. So thank you for saying that. On the templates, Yeah, I think the revenue they were well filled in last year, and the capital were not so well filled in last year. And we've looked to improve the capital template, and I have stressed the importance that they must be of decent quality. I cannot guarantee that every box will be completed, but I can tell you I am doing all I can to bring the standard of the capital templates up to at least up to those that you received on revenue, and I think you thought in the main they were of they were useful and did the job.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Clive.
Just one last question. Thank you, Guy. You've got a form here, page 33, how to complete the capital bid form. I just wondered if you could put a line in there that says that the officers should consider any equalities issues now. A full qualities impact assessment might not be actually possible straight away, but would actually have to be put with most bids, I'm sure. But at least if there was a line in there saying give some consideration to it now would be helpful, because it could mean that a service is going to cost more. It could mean that there could be some savings. I just think that would be a good line to have in there, so that we start to think more about qualities impact assessments.
Yeah, thanks, Clive. I think that's a good point. I think we should, and I'll do that. Obviously, the full equalities consideration needs to be taken at the earliest possible opportunity, as the scheme is being thought about, constructed, designed, should I say, at its very inception. But the earlier we can give you should be thinking about this now, and have this very much at the forefront of your mind. I think that will be a good signal to send.
Thank you.
I think you're right, Clive, and I would say that it needs to be one of the drivers of anything we do, and I think that's really important. So
absolutely agree.
It needs to be right at the start. I mean, say the social, one of the things that we may find ourselves, if we do find ourselves in a position with regards to having to make some difficult decisions, part of that decision is definitely going to be the social and equality impact of that decision.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you. Okay, I think considering we spent an hour and 45 on this, we will move on to the next item. But Graham, John, thank you very much once again for a very well prepared document. And this isn't a easy process, but it does need to be a thorough process. So thank you very much for the time and energy in the team being done to this. And thank you for everyone in the chamber and outside the chamber for the pertinent questions this evening as well. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, and we've got the big items coming, so we'll see. But Graham, John, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the sports and leisure facilities review.
We're going now, if that's okay.
Yeah. No, that's fine. You can disappear. I don't think we need you for anything else.
I'm sticking around for the leisure. That's okay, Chairman.
Okay.
Well, that's welcome. So anyway, but thank you very much, John.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheers, mate. Right. Sorry. Okay. Bev, Susan, Joseph, Parry. Whoever's going first, go first.
Okay. Welcome, Chairman and everyone. So I have Susan and Joe with me tonight. So we're doing a joint presentation. So I'll just share the screen. Okay. So reviewing whether sport and leisure facilities meet the needs of local residents. Okay, so how are we doing? So at the moment, we're doing very well according to recent public health profile. Both children and adults are exceeding national average at the moment. As you can see, the percentages up on the screen. We have a number of leisure centres, so we've mapped them. So we have the new Bournemouth Leisure Centre, Loddon Valley, Rush Green, Arborfield. We have the new Carnival Pool, which is due next summer, St Crispin Centre, and our new boxing studio, which is going to be in Peach Place. The leisure facilities we have, so we have a gym, swim and group exercise, racket sports. There's a number of listed items here below. A soft play at Loddon Valley. We have 4 dual use school that use the sports hall for our facilities. We offer free school sessions for those on free school meals. You can see the list here, but on the next slide, there'll be within the leisure contract. So we have a leisure contract with Places Leisure. It's a 15-year contract. We're in year 4 at the moment. So when we wrote the contract, we wanted to put in some benefits to our residents. So we've offered care leavers up to the age of 25 free memberships, the carers and siblings, children in care. We have free gym and swim members for foster children and siblings, free gym and swim for foster parents. We offer free swimming for children on free school meals during every school holiday. For the over 60s, they can have 4 sessions per week. We have free access to national sports people, so anyone at national level will be able to train free in any of our leisure centres. And we have 3 Live Well gyms, well, the 3rd one will be at Carnival, within the leisure centres. And we've provided lots of space within the centre, so all our school holiday programmes within the sports hall are all free of charge.
So we've got a little summary about the outdoor and open spaces. We have 2 tennis venues based at Cantley Park and Woos Hill, which include 12 floodlit courts. We have 17 active and available grass pitches for sort of football games. We have 7 3G pitches, including the new one opened 3 weeks ago at Cantley Park. To cover a variety of other sports, we have cricket, an artificial wicket that went in this summer, and prospective cricket nets over at Cantley Park as well, and including netball, hockey and archery facilities. We have updated and improved the greenways, and we have a Walking for Health programme that is run by volunteers. The outdoor play areas and parks, including Cantley Park, Dinton, California, and then various smaller other play areas across the borough. We have our health prevention programs. So these are run out of our 3 Live Well gyms and a variety of different venues across the borough. And these include our long-term health condition gyms based at Bournemouth, Loddon and soon to be Carnival, our cardiac rehab program, our falls prevention, including steady steps, and our one-to-one visits under our Moving with Confidence scheme, exercise referral, mindful health and wellbeing, and we're running a series of sort of tea dances and seated exercise, which is part of our aging active and dementia friendly sessions. We also run a variety of specialised programmes. This includes our over 60s Shine exercise programme, where we're currently running up to 40 classes, again, across the borough at various different locations. Our Working Active Kids or WAC holiday camps, which includes our sports-specific camps, where we've run football, netball and rugby, as well as free places for our housing tenant children, which is 2 spaces per week. Children and adults with additional needs, and our workplace health scheme, which is for our WBC employees. We've put a lot of investment into our Cantley Park, up to £2.2 million, which includes the enhancement of the changing rooms and a new 3G pitch cafe, which has been open now for a month, the greenways and a new play area, which is under development at the moment. We also have a series of events that have been running this year and leading into 2022. This includes the Woking Half Marathon, a family fun day, Celebrate Age in 2022. During COVID, we started a series of outdoor exercise classes, which continued into the September and October months, and we'll look to revisit these when the weather turns a bit nicer next spring. A box tournament and our winter event, which includes an 80-person ice rink and a Christmas market as well.
Okay, so the investments we've made over the last 18 months, as you can see, there's a significant amount of sort of £52.9 million worth, and there's the whole sort of variety of investments that have gone on. And we also have some new developments in the pipeline coming in 2022, and we have a new 3G pitch at Laurel Park, which we're applying for at the moment, and applying for Football Foundation up to the value of sort of 500k plus. Arborfield Green, we're working with Crest Nicholson at the moment to refurbish some tennis courts, football pitches in the cricket square. We have our new box fit studio at Peach Place. This is a new boxing. We should open the end of October. The reopening of Carnival Hub, the swimming pool, this £23 million investment, that should be ready by next summer. We've got 3 outdoor gyms to be developed, one at Cantley, Arborfield and Laurel Park. And Arborfield swimming pool is in the pipeline in the next couple of years. We're working on the anti-poverty and equalities. So as we've stated before, a lot of these programmes are in the leisure contract. They're subsidised. We have a lot of prevention programmes, active ageing, we work with a pupil premium, attendance services where the children go free on the school holiday programmes, the 60+ swimming, the kids on free school meals, they can have access to the school holiday programmes. We work with youth offending. So we just, we're working with youth offending at the moment, so they'll be offered use of the boxing studio. All our facilities are DDA compliant, and with the equalities, we're all inclusive of all our programmes, and have a demographic, we cover for demographic social groups.
Pass it to Susan. Thank you. Sorry, waving around. So just to go over some of the leisure statistics, we've used a pre-COVID year. As you can probably guess, the numbers are quite varied due to COVID. So this is for 2020. And that shows, so 1.3 million in our fitness attendance. This is around our leisure centres. So this is our gym, group exercise, racket sports and outdoor facilities. 157,000 children attending our swimming lessons. We had 24,000 shine attendances in a year, and over 7,000 attended in our health prevention programmes. We also had over 4,000 on our holiday clubs and 1,700 on our Walking for Health scheme. We also had over 200 attendances for our dementia and active ageing sessions. We've revised our leisure strategy for 21 to 25. This is in draft form at the moment. As part of producing the strategy, we conducted a consultation, and we did this in some following areas, and that was face-to-face sessions with our residents. This is within our leisure centres, town centres, went to sporting clubs, also existing users of all our facilities, our health and wellbeing subgroups, the Sports Council, national governing bodies, Get Berkshire Active, and volunteer groups and town parish councils. We were lucky enough to receive 526 responses, and they did age, the range was from 16 to 75 plus. So some of the key results from the consultations that we pulled out. So this is around at the facilities you currently visit. Is there anything you would like to see added? Obviously, the most there at 67% was additional sports facilities and more classes, but the other two areas were obviously around more bins and also better cycleways, which obviously includes those people that visit our parks and open spaces. The second area we looked at was what we could do to encourage you and all your family to be more physically active. Obviously, you can see there the two high scoring was around classes and the cost of our sessions. The key results from the consultation, so some of our common themes, were around more outdoor options, reducing costs, more options for young people, better parking, cycle routes, and that wider variety of exercise classes. Back to Bev for next steps.
Okay, so after the consultation, we've got to review our strategy against the consultation results to ensure that they align with one another. So we're going to work with our key teams to feedback improvements highlighted in the consultation, such as My Journey, the car parks and greener and cleaner. We do chair the physical activity, health and wellbeing group, and most of those sit on there, so it's a good opportunity to bring up those issues. We're reviewing the pricing across all services. We're reviewing and introduce new programs for young people and work with key services such as youth council and the community support. Introduce outdoor gym facilities and any outdoor in other areas, and further consultation with the young population. That was a key issue, that there wasn't much to do for sort of teenagers, so that's one area that we're going to highlight. So next steps, you've got a copy of the action plan, so we're just going to review that. We've got 7 key priority areas within the leisure strategy, so we've have a draft action plan at the moment. So once we had all the feedback, we can update that, and the leisure strategy will go back in January to the exec. Questions?
Okay, thank you. Members indicate with your hands. And Alison, if you want to know. Right, if that's the case, then as Anne put her microphone on as a way of symboling things, she can go first.
Good evening. I submitted a question by email. It was about, I've got 2 questions to ask here. It was about the leisure statistics. I just wondered if you could confirm that the statistics refer to the same time period, because 1.3 million gym visits sounds quite a high number to me for the COVID year 2020, but the number of attendances for in the walks of health at 1,700, that sounds like quite a low number to me for outside a COVID year. So yeah, presumably that is a COVID year. So I just wondered, which do they all pertain to the same period?
It was years 1920, financial
right.
years. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that figure does seem quite low for the walks for health then, because I would expect it to have been about 10,000.
This is individuals, not youth. This is individuals. So we've got 1,700 on our sort of database.
Oh, so they might do many walks. So it's not really attendances then, is it?
No, it's sorry. So this is 1,700 walkers that we have.
Would you change that wording then, please? Because it's not attendances, then it's walkers.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. And then the other thing is, in your survey, your leisure survey, did you manage to encapsulate views from people who don't attend leisure facilities? Because I noticed that there's a lot of groups who might be involved with already in some way, but
yeah,
that's people who never go anywhere.
Yeah, so it went online as well and had some comms out, and we also went into the town centres, into Woodley and Wokingham over sort of 6 weeks, over 6 Saturdays, to do some consultation as well. So we did pick up the majority of public who don't use the facilities.
Oh right, okay, thank you.
Diane, thank you. Shirley.
Thank you, Guy. Yes, I've got a couple of questions about these leisure contract, and on here we've got these free sessions, free memberships for different groups, which I think is a fantastic idea. I'm quite amazed that I've never heard of this before, particularly because I'm involved in a project which primarily involves children who are on preschool meals, and I just wonder how these free sessions for preschool meal children and so forth are advertised? Is this a very new thing that's just come in, or you were saying that you built it into the contract? So I'm assuming it's been going for 4 years. I can't remember, I haven't heard about it.
Okay, the actual passes go direct to the school. So the school inform us how many children are on free school meals, and we just send the passes to the school, and the school distribute the cards to the children.
And how many sessions do they get during the school holidays? For
as many sessions, they can go every day if they want.
Really? Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you. I'm amazed that I haven't heard about that before. So that's really good. And I assume up here on the second line where it says carers and siblings, is that young carers as opposed to?
Yes, yeah.
Young carers.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much. On the subject of specialist programs, this over 60s exercise program, the SHINE scheme. I've had some residents who contacted me because the prices of the SHINE scheme have gone up enormously since August. It was £180 per annum to do unlimited classes, and it's now gone up to £780 per annum to do unlimited classes, which is an astronomical increase, which I think is, and it's certainly putting off some of my elderly residents from taking part in the same way that they did previously. And it worries me slightly because I think these classes are really important for an age group who were confined to barracks, as it were, for a great chunk of time because of COVID, with an effect on their mental and physical health. And for those residents going to these kind of classes, I think is really important. And I wouldn't want them to be put off because of the cost. And I think that's might be what's happening. And I just wonder if you had noticed a fall off from your previous figures of 24,000 attendances in the year 1920. What's the take up been since the price increase?
Okay, I'll just pass you over to Joe. Joe's been working on SHINE, so he'll be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, so in reference to the price increase, we did run a few statistics and get an understanding between the attendances and obviously the income and expenditure of the programme itself. And obviously pre-COVID, we ran about 70 classes per year, with obviously venue constraints and various other different sort of difficulties we encountered over COVID, the lockdowns and such. The programme did reduce due to the COVID cleaning procedures and trying to make sure the venues were COVID safe, and also the number of spaces we could physically have on public health guidance per class was significantly reduced. And in order to kind of maintain the programme and develop it, to encourage new instructors, new venues, new classes, and also try and reach a wider sort of areas within the borough and not just keep it centralised to town centres, there was a price increase. Obviously, you highlighted the increase of sort of around about £200 for the annual membership to the unlimited, which was up to about £700. We did look to split this into a sort of monthly package, where we'd allow members to access the unlimited or the variety of different package bundles that we created for them in a monthly payment. And these were able to be frozen and customised as and when they needed if they were away for a period of time or unable to attend. Obviously, following some sort of information days and consultations with our SHINE members, we have sort of looked at the structure, and we encountered some difficulties with our booking system that were kind of unforeseen, and we've been working hard to procure a new system that we're hoping to sort of announce in the next sort of 2 weeks with our members, and try and obviously get them to come back. In terms of the numbers question you asked, we have seen a slight decrease in terms of members taking up, but in terms of the percentage attending, it's relatively stayed consistent throughout the COVID period. We have seen our membership prior to COVID was roughly about sort of 2,000 individual members. We estimate that this decreased to around about 12 to 1,300, which is quite a similar decrease seen across the gym and the fitness industry itself. A lot of these members were, as you say, shielding or not wanting to kind of endeavour to go out into the world based upon the sort of the COVID numbers that were out there at the time. So since COVID obviously hit in sort of March 2020, we did see the members decrease, but in terms of the number of spaces occupied for what we were able to offer, we've managed to maintain a quite high percentage. Around about 76% of the spaces offered were taken by our SHINE members. And obviously with hopefully the new booking system that allows them to manage their membership, we're hoping that this would come back to sort of similar levels, and also give us the time and added admin opportunities to develop the programme and increase new classes, and also a new set of members who may have come into the over 60s bracket sort of in the last 2 years.
Yeah, thank you for that. I still am concerned that a lot of people who were taking part in it will cease to do so, and that will be to the detriment of their health and well-being. And I think that is a colossal increase in the yearly amount. It's absolutely colossal. It was £180 if you took out a yearly membership, and it's now, if you pay the £65 a month for unlimited, that takes you to £780 per annum, which I think is going to exclude a lot of our poorer elderly people, and even some who possibly aren't poor, but were kind of, I think about someone like my mother-in-law who wasn't poor, but she would think, oh my goodness, I can't afford that increase, and would stop going. And I think that's something that we need to watch very carefully in terms of how many people, if we do see a significant drop off in members. I mean, the increases only came into effect in August, so we haven't had time really to see how that pans out. But I think it's something that we should follow quite closely.
We have done lots of benchmarking, and it's still very cheap compared to other authorities. So we're still within the parameter of each sort of exercise class, but we are reviewing it as the new package comes in.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Clive.
Thank you, Guy. My question is for Parry, actually. It's on page 55, and we've got this lovely big figure of investment that we have invested in leisure of 52.9 million. And if you were to read that, and I'm sure some residents will do, they're going to think, oh, the council's done really well. A lot of my council tax, 52.9 million. But of course, it isn't, is it? A lot of it is grant. A lot of it is from organisations like the Football Foundation. So in the interest of transparency, would you say that it would be a good idea, or would you agree that it's a good idea to split it up and actually show where the money has actually come from, rather than try to suggest that it has come from us as a council?
Thank you, Clive. I think in every kind of sort of project, take for instance the 3D pitches, we have always identified the costs that we will put up and the costs that we actually claim from places like Football Foundation. So the costs are transparent to everybody, and we do try to make as much as possible to make sure that we remain transparent, and certainly those grants are very helpful, and they will go a long way towards providing these facilities, but bulk of the money still comes from the taxpayers' money, and we are very, very grateful for that.
Bulk of the money comes from taxpayers as a whole, because a lot of it is government grant, isn't it? Or not just Football Foundation, but one that does concern me is the Loddon Valley Leisure Centre refurbishment of £2.2 million. Because I've read that this is great news. It wasn't you, Parry, that said this. This was before your time, but it was great news. The council have spent £2.2 million on refurbishment at Loddon Valley Leisure Centre, and then you find out well, actually it wasn't the council; it was Places Leisure who did it when they took over the contract, and they used their money to do that. And I just don't find that sort of thing very transparent at all. And I think that we should redo those figures, being a bit more honest and not trying to massage them. But I guess you're going to disagree.
Yeah, no, not at all, Clive. And like I said, we are transparent, and if the money has come from sources away from the council, we do identify them.
All right. Next question.
Sorry, Clive, to jump, because I'm Leisure's my portfolio as well. I felt compelled to come in there. The fact that Places Leisure put £2.2 million in, or whatever they put in, the council is still paying for that. It's just how the contract is constructed. So they don't just put it in as a free will gesture. It's all part of the contract that we get into, a long-term contract that requires them to invest in our facilities. So it's all of our doing. It's our contractual arrangements that requires them to do that and enhance the facility for the community. So I would say it is wholly the council's efforts and investments that do that. It's just in that contractual arrangement that that Places Leisure were required to upgrade and put the fantastic facilities in place that they have. I would also wouldn't want it to be underestimated the amount of work that the likes of Bev and her team will put into to secure and win grants from the Football Foundation and from other places. And if they didn't do that work and didn't win the bid, then we wouldn't have the money. So I think it's wholly appropriate to put the benefit of that grant to the council, because it's the council that went out and won the grant and then utilised it in the best way it could for the community. So I wouldn't want to undersell the work that Bev and her team have done in putting together fantastic contracts. That took a huge amount of work, the Places Leisure contract, and it was a massive upgrade on the previous one. And the experience is a massive shame that COVID impacted on what was a fantastic experience. And I wouldn't want to undersell the amount of work Bev and her team going out and levering in grants from whatever source in order for us to be able to afford to invest in these facilities. I just didn't want that to be misunderstood.
I think you're absolutely right. In my own view, and I've given it to Bev before, I think she does a fantastic job getting in lots of money. And when she tells us that she's got money from the Football Foundation for different places across the borough, I think that's really good. And I know that I have said that to her before. So I entirely agree with you, Graham. But I do think that it should be transparent, that we should be saying where that money has come from for all of these projects. And you might be right in what you say about Loddon Valley Leisure Centre, that we negotiated with them and we said to them, we want you to refurbish, spend £2 million on refurbishment here. It's going to be part of your contract. But it could also have been the other way around, that Places Leisure said, we want this contract and we will put £2 million worth of investment into this leisure centre, and we will put investment into this one and this one and this one to be able to get it. So there is another side to the coin to what you just said, Graham, which was actually specifically why I asked Harry and not an officer to reply to that. But can I move on to the boxing studio, or the box fit studio as it's
one more, Clive, and then we'll move to someone else.
Okay. Just wondered how much that cost.
So the boxing gym investment was 630k in total.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm going to go to Alison on Teams next.
Hello, Parry.
Hi, Alison.
Hello, Bev. Thank you very much for all you're doing, Bev. I think it's incredibly impressive all that we're offering our residents. And I know how the executive member and the team have been working very hard to continue to find new and exciting offers to engage far more people in exercise and sports, which is why I'd like to ask about the Boxer site, the Boxer Hub in Wokingham, and how that's going to appeal to all demographics, or perhaps we're particularly targeting some of our residents.
Yeah, so this is Joe's baby, so he's developed the programme, so I'll just pass you over, but we have got a whole host of programmes coming out.
Sure. So I think the idea kind of originated sort of last autumn, kind of after the initial restrictions in terms of people's opportunity to engage in sport and leisure. Primarily, obviously, during the initial lockdown, the majority of people were only able to access outdoor spaces, which we've noticed they've been coming down in their numbers, which is fantastic to see. Obviously, following on from sort of the restrictions we saw moving in over Christmas, we kind of identified potentially sort of a hole in the offering of it that we do in sport and leisure, and also within Wokingham and Berkshire as a whole. Obviously, we came up with the idea of a combat-based facility, and primarily boxing, and we do also offer a variety of different combat sports such as Muay Thai and kickboxing, to name a few. And kind of the idea stemmed through the disciplined approach that combat sports allow people to kind of engage in activity that isn't your traditional gym style offering, or your traditional cardiovascular, running, swimming, all those sorts of activities. So we kind of noticed a bit of a hole in the market that we wanted to try and allow people to have that opportunity to remain active, but in a different activity. Obviously, within that facility that we've created, and hopefully will be opening later this month, we have kind of had a focus on the functional side of sport and activity, with some quite bespoke bits of kit and equipment that will hopefully encourage people to maybe find a new sport activity or passion. And the idea behind it is we want to try and create a real sort of community feel within the BXG Fit, that people kind of have a sense of ownership within that facility, and with the various different types of classes, boxing space that we offer, and also the extracurricular sort of activities that we have with our juniors, engaging with the young offenders, and also sort of our off-peak sessions. We're hoping to kind of create a new offering for people to kind of engage with, which we've from the initial sort of sign-ups and interest that we've had registered as kind of started kind of really promising, and that's kind of without anybody being able to step foot in the building itself or see the facility. It's all through images and 3D renders. So we're quite excited to let people to have a look at what we've obviously created within the space.
Just to support Joe's comments there, Alison, it is very demand driven. The whole objective of creating that boxing gym was based on demand and people wanting to actually have that facility within the borough. We don't have such a facility, a brand new facility in the borough, and Peach Place is creating that facility, and it is demand driven, and it will be very, very well welcomed by the communities and the residents of the borough who demanded it. Sorry, Beth.
So it's not just young people, it's going to be equally trying to attract over 50s and over 60s.
Yes, yeah, we've had a high proportion of females inquire as well, and the range is from sort of 30 to 70, so the age range is quite immense, really.
I think one thing we've been pleased to see is of the general inquiries that I sort of pick up each day. It ranges, like Bev said, families are looking to get involved and engage with the children. So we'll have specific junior sessions. Children over the age of 8 will be allowed to get involved in our classes, and also our non-sort of weight-based activities within the fitness space itself. And also we're looking to kind of go alongside sort of female self-defence in our off-peak sessions to try and kind of keep it sort of completely inclusive and wide-ranging, and give something that potentially people haven't been able to access over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years.
So is this all pay as you go? There's not a membership of it?
It'll be a combination of both. We've tried to create quite a wide variety of membership offers and also pay-as-you-go options. Obviously, we understand that different people have different needs. So it may be that they want to have this as their sole workout space, or they may want to supplement what we offer with what they already use, which is obviously we want to be able to cater for both. So we'll be offering sort of pay-as-you-go individual sessions, bundles, as well as a membership style structure. Obviously, people who kind of go for our memberships, we try and sort of get them engaged with the community, and it's something which our new booking system that we've procured will allow them to do, and also kind of create facility-based challenges inside and outside of their time spent at BXG Fit, so that they kind of really get that sense of belonging.
That's great. Thank you very much for all the information.
You're welcome, Alison.
Okay, thank you. Sam, did you indicate?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, definitely looking forward to attending that boxing gym when it opens up. My question was, Bournemouth Leisure Centre says it costs 14.5 million, but Carnival will cost 23 million. Can you just explain to me why this big difference in cost, please?
It's a larger centre. We have the library inside as well. The whole square metre area is a lot larger to Bournemouth. We have additional forecourt sports hall, a 25 this swimming change, a larger 100-seat cafe area. We have 3 studios upstairs, a long-term conditioned gym. The whole area is a lot larger compared to Bournemouth. With Bournemouth, we restricted on size, on the footprint, but Carnival we extended a lot more because the library has taken up quite a large space as well.
Thanks, Vera. And I think, Sam, is that we needed a cultural hub within the borough, and Carnival will provide that. And not only will it provide the sporting facilities, but the cultural side is also catered for. And they've talked about a large area there where we'll have a proper stage and proper seating for cultural events that can be catered for within the facility. And of course, the library itself will be there, like Bev has mentioned. And so it's a much bigger facility, and hence the cost is reflected in that.
Brilliant, thank you.
Paul.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions around the consultation on page 59. 14% of respondents requested more bins. When these are installed, will they be dual recycling and waste? Another question on page 59, 90% of respondents requested more cycle routes. Are these routes to and from the leisure centre, so users don't need to use the car? And has that information been fed back into the draft LC WIP, the local cycle walking and infrastructure plan? On pages 60 and 61, better parking, what does that actually mean? Because to me, more parking spaces means it's easier to use the car, and that goes against the Climate Emergency Action Plan, where there is a target for reducing car journeys. And then finally, on page 70, the priority 6 active travel, increased proportion of adults walking and cycling and travel at least 3 days a week. That particular action is really just tinkering at the edges if you really want people to actively travel, because the DFT indicates that 60% of car journeys are only up to 5 kilometres, which is a comfortable cycling distance if you've got a good quality and safe network. Those are my questions. Thank you.
The bin, so as I mentioned in the consultation, we're aware of the bins, the cycle routes and the active travel. And this will feed into our colleagues in My Journey and Greener and Cleaner team. And again, they are aware of the consultation, so we're working with them on the health and wellbeing physical activity action plan anyway. But this will be a piece of work that we will pick up when we write the action plan. The car parking, we're trying. I think any facility, any leisure facility that we have at the moment is struggling parking their car at Loddon Valley. Bourmash, they're all rammed because we you know, we've got so many people trying to access our leisure facilities. So what we are trying to do, like with Laurel Park, we're trying to put in 3G pitches where the public don't have to travel, you know, but hoping them to walk to the facilities. So we've done the same for Cantley. With the Cantley project, we increased the car parking with additional sort of 40 spaces. So we are aware that, but any sports facility, not just in Woking and Borough, you'll find parking is an issue anywhere.
And just to support that, Paul, is that the parking, we were limited to the parking that's available at these sites mentioned, and people are asking for more parking. But having said that, we know that and we're aware that the parking is limited. So just to not get away from the fact that we want people to use bikes and be more active, but we want to make sure that a balance is created in terms of people who want to use the cars have the spaces to park their cars.
I could just come back on that one. I think one of the main reasons that a number of these facilities are rammed with cars is because there is not a decent network to and from those facilities. If that was provided, then that comes back into the point I made earlier, about 60% of car journeys are up to 5 kilometres. And that would take away a lot of those journeys if you had decent facilities to and from the leisure areas. So I think that just needs to be taken into account when you're reviewing your action plan.
Yeah.
Well, I think you'll agree with me that we've got to change the mindset of the people to use less cars and get more active. But it's just getting that mindset corrected through proper education, and we will get there eventually. But you know, the tendency, the psyche of the people is that jump in the car and go. But we have to change that mindset to actually go for the walking routes and the cycling routes rather than using the car. But it's that hurdle. We've got to jump that hurdle first.
Well, if I just make one comment on that, I think you've got that answer from your consultation where 19% of respondents have come back saying they want better cycleways. Yeah.
It's very good. That's excellent news to me. But people still tend to jump in their cars and go there. But we're changing slowly. But you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. But we'll get there.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to ask a quick couple of questions before I go back to Clive and Shirley, because otherwise I never get to ask a question. The first one that I've got is with some good content in here and some very interesting reviews. The one thing that I don't see in regards to looking forward for the strategy and how we're reviewing it going forward is actually where our partners of the town and parish councils come into it. Apart from one line on page 41, effectively, I've not seen anything in detail on how we can work with the towns and parishes to support that, because there's some great assets in Early. I also know that the Working Without councillors asked me to mention Pinewood as well, as that is a bit of a hidden treasure that my daughter absolutely loves because of the train set there. Well, a bit bigger than the one we have going around the house at the moment. So I want to know where our town and parishes and supporting them and them supporting us on the leisure strategy comes into play, because so far I haven't really seen the detail of that.
Okay, we have on the health and wellbeing physical activity action plan, there's a town and parish rep. We're still waiting to find out who's going to be on that at the moment, but we can add that to the actions. But we do work with the town and parishes. We're currently working with Shinfield Parish Council. We had a meeting with them a couple of weeks ago to help them develop their facilities, and again working with early at Laurel Park with them. But we can put something into the action plan that we engage with town and parishes. It's not a problem. And work with them together.
I totally agree there, Bev. I think we need to work with the towns and parishes because they will form an integral part of the input into our strategy, and they have a very useful input in there. And yes, I work with the chairman there who actually coordinates and chairs that group, and will work with them. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I asked for in this point of view, because I mean, in some cases, the borough council is actually the landowner, and it's the parishes that are basically running the facilities on the borough's behalf. So we need to remember that as well. Yeah. That would be a good point for this to go to the Borough Parish Liaison Forum as well, so that they can get a full update, because I'm certain that our parish colleagues will be very much aware about what is going on more locally than we are. You know, I only found out about the Pinewood train tracks by accident when I drove by it about 2 years ago, for example. So yeah, that's where we can go. Okay, that's my question done off the top of my head. Shirley.
Thank you, Guy. I've got a couple of points. One is just picking up on something that Paul said about getting people out of their cars. And Bournemouth Leisure Centre is on a number of bus routes. And I wonder whether we could in some way incentivise bus travel to the leisure centre by perhaps on production of your bus ticket, you've got a reduction in the price or something like that. That might work. I don't know. It's just a thought that popped into my head. But the other one is just going back to the elderly for a moment. On the priorities, health and well-being in general, and we've got increasing the number of active adults, and we've got reduction of overweight and obese, and increasing activity levels for children, very, very specifically. And I think I'd like to see in there something that was much more specific to perhaps the over 60s. I know further on in here we've got something about raising participation, but I think that is kind of aimed much more at an even older demographic, people who are in danger of falling or social isolation and so on and so forth. And I think that we've got lots of things in here for young people or people, you know, in their 30s, 40s, 50s. But perhaps when people get into their 60s and 70s, they're still active. They're still the ambulant elderly, if you like, and we want to keep them that way. And I wonder whether we should have a specific section in there that is targeting those people.
We can do the so your first point about the bus incentive. I can speak to Places Leisure to see if we can work with the corporate transport on that, because it's not just Bournemouth. You know, we've got other facilities, so I'll pick that up with Places Leisure and corporate transport. There's no problem. We can add on the usage numbers for the Shine over 60s programme. It'd be quite hard in the leisure centres because they're not obliged to give their age, but we can use the Shine database because that is specifically for over 60s.
Yeah, what I meant was on your priority, this table that we've got here, this very large table, priority health and wellbeing general, is whether we could just have a category, and within that category, not specifically shine, but identify all the things that, so, you know, the things that we're saying we're going to do for children, you know, there must be similar equivalents to for older people. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Clive, you indicated you have some more.
Yep, thank you, Guy. On page 40, Beth, Bev, sorry, you talk about prevention programs and for people with different health conditions. Cardiac rehab, is it still a pretty good take up? I actually did it 5 years ago, and it was quite reasonable for 75% for the class, but not so good for the other 25. They only came to 1 or 2 of the weeks.
Yeah, we have 3 classes a week. 3 classes a week. Yeah. Still up and running. Yeah.
Right. Do we do anything for people who suffer with diabetes?
On GP referral. Yes, that's through the GP referral. So. Yeah. And
then moving on to page 40, we've got 157,000 people attending swimming lessons. I assume most of those are children.
Children,
yeah. But are those through schools, or are these being paid for by their parents?
Paid for by the parents. Yes, they're individual swimming lessons.
Okay.
To offer for during the weekends.
But 157,000 people doing that is pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, we are quite there's waiting lists for swimming lessons.
And so there's a shortage of teachers. So 25 years ago, my children did ducklings and dolphins, and now they can swim for miles, which is great because I can't. I can only do 10 yards.
We constantly work with Swim England to attract new teachers. So it's a cycle. We just keep putting courses on, and lifeguard training as well to keep the momentum
there. We've got 4,000 participants in our holiday clubs. Are those holiday clubs run by the borough, or are they some of the private schemes around?
No, they're our holiday clubs run by the borough.
Run by Woking and Borough Council.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good, having 4,000 using those. Has that gone up?
During COVID, no, because we were restricted by the bubbles, so we had to reduce it to 30 children in one camp, 15 in each bubble. But we're hoping to get it again, going again next year.
And under equalities and anti-poverty, you mentioned the pupil premium. Do you know how much of the school's pupil premium is actually spent on sports and leisure?
No, it's individual. The school approaches us if they want to pay for a swimming lesson or a holiday club. The school pay for the child, so we're not sure how much in total, because some of the schools could use private operators as well.
Okay. And then on page 42, it's good that we're thinking of introducing outdoor gym facilities. Have you talked to any town and parish councils about that?
No,
because they've got lots of play areas, haven't they?
Yes, we're in the process of just finalising the designs. Once we've done that, then we'll go out to the town and parishes.
Okay. We'll be sure to come and talk to early town council.
Yes, we will do.
Okay. And then my last question is, what are we doing to look at providing sports and leisure facilities for hard to reach groups? Thinking particularly Muslim women and perhaps people with fairly low disposable incomes and disabled residents. What are we doing to encourage disabled residents to be more?
This
Because we want to see them in the Olympics in a few years' time.
So we have disabled programs, and we've got the new Live Well gyms coming out, but we also link in with the Health and Wellbeing Action Group. So some of the targets are BME, disabled, and on low incomes. So we'd attract funding to put on activities for them. So we're working with Get Berkshire Active and the group within the Health and Wellbeing Action Group to put in a bid. We're going to start on the low income families. So we'll work with the localities team who can target the areas that are in need at the moment. So we've got that in the pipeline.
Is there money that we can try and get from organisations like Sport England and that sort of thing?
It's mainly through Get Berkshire. The sport, you can get some money from Sport England, but because we're an affluent area, it normally goes to Reading and Slough for those groups. But with Get Berkshire Active, we can apply for funding, which comes from Sport England, but it's localised, for Berkshire.
Thank you very much. And just for the benefit of the minutes, I think you do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
That's an important point to make. And just for your information, Clive, there is a challenge around swimming teachers around the country. My sister happens to be one. So I hear all of the horror stories in regards to that, because no one could really get qualified for a year. That's the biggest challenge. And they also can't recertify on lifeguarding and things like that. So it's a bit of a challenge. Shirley, you indicated we'll have that as the last one, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you. Sorry for having another question. You mentioned the number of children who are having swimming lessons in the borough, which is great. I was reading an article the other day in the paper about how low the take-up is of swimming in the BAME community. And I just wondered if you've got any things going on where you're going to try and encourage swimming in the BAME community. It's historically it has been a problem. I know both my children swam competitively, and I can recollect that during their years of doing that, there were, I could count on the fingers of one hand the number of children from the BAME community who were doing swimming. And I, as I say, recently read this article, and I was quite disappointed to find that the situation doesn't seem to have improved a great deal.
We haven't had any feedback from the BME that they can't access the swimming, but again, it would be picked up in the Health and Wellbeing Action Group to target this area. So if there is an issue, then we would pick it up.
I think one aspect that could be done to improve here, because this was an area that I was picking up, and Shirley asked the question I was going to finish on, so that worked completely fine, is in regards to the advertisement and marketing aspect. Have we approached the local churches, mosques, temples, etc., to basically advertise where we can various different facilities that we offer, from swimming lessons to gym membership, boxing, etc. Has that approach been taken? Because they always have the community notice boards in those facilities.
Yeah.
That regard.
We visit the marketing and target these areas, but we do the social media that goes out borough wide, and hopefully that's picked up through there. But we can also put this on the list when we do the marketing. It's not an issue.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Sorry to jump in at the end there, Shirley, but I thought it was a nice one to go into. Okay, I think we've got personally, I think what's being done here is a very good start of the 10, as it were. I think people's needs have changed since the pandemic. and it's right that we are doing this review, not only to get people back out and about, but also encouraging things a little more outside of everyone's comfort zones, says the father who is now getting himself kicked regularly by his 5-year-old who's taken up kickboxing. So yeah, this is some very good work. I look forward to seeing more down the line as this progresses, and we need to keep up some of these good numbers that we have, but we need to encourage that everyone takes more logical means to get to some places. So to the team on Joseph's camera, thank you very much.
Chairman, if I may have
Harry, go ahead, cover
just a
as
couple
well.
of words that despite the financial challenges faced by the authority, we've worked very, very smartly, and I think all the credit goes to Bev and her team to work very smartly with attracting funds from the outside and spending our own money as well to meet the needs of our residents and their health and well-being. And as a result, the borough has been recognised as the healthiest place in the country to live. So I think clearly that we've met the needs of the local residents in our borough, and I think the leisure strategy that's working very well, and it will be implemented very, very soon. And that's based on all the feedback from the residents through our consultation, and it's the best place for leisure services in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Parry. And yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and keep up the good work, everyone. It's very good work. So you may disappear now. Graham can finally disappear as well. Cantley looks lovely, by the way. So thank you very much for attending. We'll move on to the final main item of the agenda this evening, which is the bringing the Public Protection Service in-house. This is a quick verbal update. I believe it's David, Steve, I can see you starting to appear, and I've also got Bill in here as well, who's supporting, I believe. So, gentlemen, I'm well aware this is live, as it were, and once again, the staff who are part of the PPP are the most important people here. So, keep us up to date, and I hope that the staff have been fully kept in the loop, as my request in the previous meetings we've had updates on this. So, go ahead, guys.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, the request is for a quick verbal update. Obviously, it wouldn't be complete without a few slides, so I'm just going to try and share my screen. I've also got David alongside me to help if you have any questions that I can't answer. David's been intrinsically involved in the whole transfer of services back to the council, so he'll have a lot of the detail to hand, I hope. But just in general terms, I know you'll remember that the desire was for a localised service, responding locally to being able to work and engaging with town and parish councils and local stakeholders, and be a little less remote than the PPP service is now. And I think there was a consensus across the council that that was the case. And so on the 18th of March in 2021, the council resolved that there should be disaggregation of services from the PPP back to a sovereign service working within Woking Borough Council. And I think, as everyone will know as well, we are bringing most of it back in-house, but not all of it. Coming back in-house is the all crucial ASB services, about which I'll say a little bit more in a moment, because they're going to be the flexible out of our service that I think everyone wants to see us provide. But alongside of that is coming back all of the food, the environmental health, the standard environmental health services, food hygiene, infection control, health and safety, and event safety. Licensing of events, which I know is a big issue in certain parts of the borough, particularly with the Henry Regatta and Rewind and all the other events that have been happening over the summer. environmental protection, private sector housing, road landlords, etc., caravans and travellers, which I know we have problems with throughout the year, and the animal warden service. However, those services that tend to look after the money rather than the health, where we're going to be purchasing back. So trading standard services, which now has changed considerably from the service it used to be. It used to be very much weights and measures and making sure that you actually got a gallon of petrol and you actually got a pint of beer, etc. It's 40% of crime now is internet fraud, and they are intrinsically involved in internet fraud, and it's really not something you can do on a small scale. So keeping the scale of trading standards together works better regionally, nationally. I think everyone has agreed, together with bringing back the proceeds of crime, which the PPP have been very successful at doing. Food standards is not food safety. It's making sure, as you would expect, that, you know, if you buy something, it is actually what it says it is on the tin. Air quality measurement and assessment, not the actions that we need to take as a council to achieve climate zero, but the measurement and assessment, which we then use to decide what actions we'll take as a council. Farm biosecurity and welfare, and casework support, which is the legal wraparound for any prosecutions that we take, whether it be environmental health or trading standards. They're very much specialists, and they work from beginning to end on a case, and we want to buy into that expertise, and it's very good value for money, I think. I know everyone agreed because it's gone through the executive now, and everyone's been briefed on it. So the proposed enhancements are there will be a visible and dedicated ASB team, and they will be working weekends, bank holidays, early mornings, evenings, and early hours, which means that essentially that's 101 extra days of service a year for the public. And in the end, this is all about enhancing the offer to the public. There will be a real-time receipt of customer service requests. Field officers will have iPads, phones out on the patch, and as customer service requests come in, we'll deal with them real-time, and will be capable of resolution now, which is what CORN stands for. That's what we want. We don't want to send people letters and ask them to fill in diaries. We want to be able to deal with problems there and then and have them resolved. And we want better coordination, or more local coordination with our own community safety teams, our own ASB teams, our localities teams, housing, council regulators, police, everybody. We need those weekly meetings to really get into the forensically into the detail, and more customer involvement and better progress updates is what we're really looking for. So in terms of progress, a lot of progress since March. The termination notice has been served, obviously. A lot of work gone into the structure and the job roles, and they've been determined and they've been evaluated. The first stage of the staff consultation for the PPP staff is now closed, and an implementation paper will be published on the 13th of October. And then there'll be a voluntary transfer process. So those that want to come over to Woking have an opportunity to express their desire to do so, and that's completed by the 12th of November. After that, we'll enter into a process of job matching and TUPE and a whole fairly complex, there's a whole complex issue, a range of HR issues which we've been negotiating with West Berks, who of course are the current employer, so they hold the cards in terms of the process, really. The head of service, we had interviews 2 weeks ago, and we've offered the job verbally. It's been accepted. It says here to start in December or January. The successful applicant is currently working for Hammersmith and Fulham and has indicated that he's trying to negotiate an 8th of November start, which would be fantastic, because he can then help to shape the service and to get on and do the rest of the interviews for the other managers that we're going to need, and indeed all of the professional staff that will be needed. West Berks have yet to sign off the final exit plan, and we're waiting for them to do that. The customer process design is well underway. We want that to be excellent. So we want the customer to feel the customer journey just to be so slick that when they contact us, that they're dealt with promptly and they get feedback and they're responded to urgently. So if anything, we may over-design that because we want it to be so good at the start, and then we can always rein back later if it's too good. Not there's anything can't possibly be too good, but I think you probably know what I mean. And then the IT system, a lot of complex work to be doing then, because obviously all of our data is held by PPP. So all of the information on our restaurants, cafes, bars, etc., and private sector housing indeed is held on their data system. So transferring that from that system into what will become our own sovereign system is complex, but it is well underway and proceeding nicely. Next steps. The staff dialogue is ongoing. That consultation is ongoing. I said it was closed, but obviously people have questions all the time, and we've got an open website for staff to ask questions, and we answer them promptly. We need to get that exit plan agreed, and we're hoping that will happen very, very soon. Still working on the operating model, the opening hours, the processes, how that's all going to work. We need to finalise that staff structure. The new head of service, it would be good that it's not set in stone, because it would be good for the new head of service to have a say in what it should look like and how he'd like it to look. Given the first item on the agenda tonight about costs, we're having an absolutely forensic look at the capital project costs, etc., and the liabilities that may accrue from removing ourselves from the PPP. And I'm sure there's going to be ongoing debate and discussions about that, but we are desperately trying to keep all project costs at an absolute minimum. There's still some mobilisation issues. The ASB team can't work out of Shoot End because it's not open on weekends and in the evenings, and so we've had to find alternative accommodation for them. And then we have to sort out vehicles, equipment, IT equipment, mobile phones, all the stuff that you would of course expect. And then we want for us to have really good communications with customers and the residents so that they know what's going on and our partners and colleagues know what's going on. And that's something, of course, we'll be working on as we approach the date that we still think we'll achieve, which is the 1st of April next year. So that was a very quick canter through where we are, and myself and David are very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. That gives us a very much a good update on where we are, I think. Members want to ask any questions, please do indicate. Just remember that some aspects of this, especially in regards to staff and everything, is still they need to know first of anything. But in that regard, we know second. So just be aware of that from your questions. And once again, the staff are doing a fantastic job. And what's being positioned here is definitely going to be an improvement and an enhancement from that point of view. So, Clive, I saw your hand shot up. Can people put their hands back up again if they had questions? Okay, so Clive, go first.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you very much, Stephen and David. Very good presentation. Could you send us copies of your slideshow? Yep,
sure.
Thank
no problem.
you very much. First thing to say is we certainly applaud all of the aims that we've got there on page 73, and because it's 2 minutes 10, I'm not going to get through all of those. It's getting a bit late. I got a few questions on page 75. So the inter-authority agreement requires that any exit plan should ensure that continuation and quality of service delivery are paramount. And I guess you would say that we're on track to do that in all of the areas that we're taking back.
Yes, I think we are. In fact, we're really hoping to enhance the service. But when I say enhance the service, I think you're right, Chair, to point out that the PPP staff have been doing a fantastic job, and this hasn't been easy for them. And it's difficult for them to hear words like we're trying to improve the service, because they think, you know, they're doing a great job as it is. So I think we're concentrating on saying we want a more local, responsive service that suits Wokingham and works with Wokingham communities and Wokingham stakeholders more than it does at the moment. And I think that's probably the fairest thing to say. But we're very confident we can achieve that.
And improve the service by making it 7 days a week.
And yes, and improve the service, obviously, working out of hours, yeah.
And then it says that we've got to minimise the cost to the councils of existing or exiting or terminating the agreement. And I think probably the relationship with other councils were not great at the beginning of this process, but I guess that's all improved now, and we're all trying to keep the cost down and successfully keeping the cost of exiting down.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said it's all been completely plain sailing, but you wouldn't expect it to be, really, would you? I mean, there are, you know, really difficult negotiations behind all of this in terms of the process and in terms of the potential liabilities. So you know, perhaps it's not the place to go into them in detail, but obviously they feel that they're losing out by Wokingham leaving the PPP and feel that there should be some elements of compensation. We obviously disagree with some of those claims, but you're absolutely right to say that those relationships have improved enormously since the start of the process. As we reach closer and closer to agreement, it is of course getting a lot better. But I don't know, David, if you want to add anything to that, because I know you've been neck deep in some of those discussions, to be honest.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yes, so the liability discussions have not yet been concluded. We think they will make us an offer, and that would be for us to consider when we've received the offer. And that's really the only area that has not been concluded. We've made an enormous amount of progress in closing the gap, in agreeing mitigations that will reduce the cost of liabilities for both councils, but we haven't quite closed the gap with them, and it remains to be seen if we do that through negotiation or if we do it through mediation or other routes. Hopefully, I think we will do it through agreement.
It'd be nice if you can, but I'm sure you'll understand that's going to be a recurring question from this group. So I've got another one. Got to identify critical timescales and issues. Have you got any concerns at the moment that we might not meet any of the critical timescales that you've got in, because you want to get this up and running by April of next year?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we did have. I think there were several issues, ICT being one, the whole staff transfer process being another. It's obviously a time-consuming thing to move the staff across and to go through all of the consultation that's necessary. It was necessary for West Berks to follow their employment protocols. For example, they are the employing authority, and they had to follow their protocols. So so there were some concerns, but actually through negotiation, we've really got there. And if everything goes reasonably smoothly, we feel that we are on track to get there by the 1st of April.
Okay, thanks. And I've got a question about the pension scheme. So we've got to come up with an exit valuation for people who are maybe moving from council to council, and is that going to be done on time? Because my experience of pension schemes sometimes is they're a little bit slow, but for the actual employees it's quite important that all those things are done in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and we've given a surety of parity, obviously, and there will be an allowance being paid for people who are being expected to work antisocial hours, and that allowance will be pensionable. But in terms of timescales, I don't know, David, if you are aware of.
Yeah, so this is an issue actually not for Wokingham, it's an issue for West Berks.
and I know they have started it and are expecting to conclude it. Both boroughs believe that this should be no impact at all because we're both paying employees into the scheme. Where there may be a pension impact, more likely will be on any redundancies. If there are any, we hope there won't be, and both boroughs are working really hard to avoid this. But if there are, then if any staff are between 55 and 60, there will be a pension strain, which we're both working very hard to avoid.
And then we've got to deal with jointly owned partnership assets. And is that going smoothly, or got any issues there?
Yeah, so this is something we will do a little bit further down the line. We haven't done this yet. The key asset really is vehicles, and I think we are looking to take a number of fleet vehicles from them, which would then in return eliminate any liability that we might be asked to pay for those vehicles. Everything else is all pretty small beer, you know, bags and tags and drain keys and fairly low value things that officers would use during their inspections.
Okay, and then a question about the police. Have we started to have some meaningful discussions with the police about how we're going to work together to improve that antisocial behaviour?
Yeah, that's really at the beginning, and I've had a meeting with community safety head Narinda Bra and the local police inspector Jerusha. Sorry, I can't remember her surname. And I've also participated in a meeting that community safety established, where around 70 police from across, these are on the ground rather than management police, from across the borough met with housing and community safety and other Wokingham staff to try and understand each other's services better, so that would help us to reform and build better partnerships when we start this service. When we start this service, this will be in some respects a big help to the police, as it will be a big help to the community, because there are times when they have problems and we're not around to help with those problems. And so that would be a big help, and we are hoping to have discussions with the police about how they can respond to that from the council in a more positive way as well, to build on that.
Okay, Clive.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Shirley now.
Thank you, Guy, but it's all right. One of my question has been answered. So
this is the challenge that I always have, basically, and this is why I try and go around everyone. Paul, do you have anything, or has Clive taken all yours as well?
No, I've got one left. It's around air quality. Air quality is very high priority. Particularly, it's growing with particulate matters now being monitored as well. You mentioned, Stephen, that measurements now going to be done by West Berkshire, but the action plan by WBC. Every year we have an annual air quality report, which is sent off DEFRA. Who is going to produce that, and why isn't it all in-house?
So the PPP are going to do that, and the reason why is because they have, it's really to avoid cutting people in half, because you have somebody that's very good at doing it, and they ensure that we meet our statutory liabilities on an annual basis. The information that will be in the report will be provided by us. It's our report, but the person that writes it is an expert at doing it and provides a really good service. And paying a third of somebody's salary rather than employing somebody to do it ourselves is very good value for money. It doesn't mean that we don't manage it, that our own areas, our Twyford management area, for example, and to be fair, they've also been good at bidding for monies to help us with some of the air quality stuff. So that expertise is worth hanging on to. And so you know, it was an officer recommendation really that we stick with that. The control of air quality isn't in the hands of the PPP. They've just got the expertise at writing the reports and doing the air quality monitoring for us, but we still need to manage it.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, the only comment and question I would make, because prior to all of my questions as well, is in that the services that will be retained by the PPP and work with other outside bodies are the ones that make logical sense from the borough point of view, because there's no point in us having our own squad on like internet fraud, as it were, because that is a far bigger kettle of fish to fight, as does farm animal welfare. Just due to the demographics of Wokingham, we do have some farm animal aspects within the borough, but compared to West Berkshire, we are a much more suburban borough in that regard. So yeah, I think I'm done. I think once again, Bill. Bill, do you want to come in and I'll sum up?
Yeah, just to say that I think we've got to remember that this is driven by one aim only, is to offer our residents a better service. And I think in particular, as has already been mentioned by Stephen, antisocial behaviour is one area which is a great concern to our residents, and one that will benefit from bringing it back in-house. And I think the point is here that working with the police, if you can nip the problem in the bud early without it escalating so that it becomes a serious matter that becomes a police matter, that's got to be for the best. And I think this will be something that will be proven to be a good result. We will be able to respond quickly to the guy who's perhaps lighting his bonfires every Sunday afternoon, or the guy who's playing heavy metal music and thinks everybody else likes it, before it actually gets out of hand and becomes a police issue. So I think we will make the whole system much better. Other areas, I mean, I think, you know, the working with our parish councils and with perhaps even our ward members is a great importance, you know, on things like certainly antisocial behaviour, food hygiene and licensing. You know, that they will have the knowledge of the shopkeeper who's actually selling to underage people with cigarettes and alcohol, so we can work with them and gain more information from them. I think it's all much for the best. It will have a great result. I think I've got to make mention of Stephen and David. I know how hard this is. It's a mammoth task to move this on. And we have regular meetings, and it's always a positive result. We hear that things are moving on well. I think it's been a very, very difficult task, and I'm sure that come April the 1st, we will be in a very, very good position. So if I can thank them for all the work that they've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just apologise to Bill, because I didn't realise you were in the room, Bill. If you look at the attendance list, you're not on there. But sorry about that.
I sneaked in.
Clive, and I will say this quick personally, is there's nothing wrong with listening to Sabaton and Dragon Force as long as it's a reasonable volume. Clive.
Thank you, Guy. I think this is probably my last question. So it says that there isn't any cost implications, that we're expecting to do it with the same budget. I'm not sure if this is a question for you two on the screen or whether it is for Bill, but I recall that there was a fund of something like £250,000 to make sure there was a smooth transfer. So that is the cost of it over the budget, isn't it? I didn't see any, when I was reading through this, I didn't see that £250,000 mentioned, but I guess it is still there.
If I remember right from the last time, and Steve, David, do correct me if I'm wrong, but that 250 was effectively a capital / special item. about the transfer over. So that was covering things like the getting laptops for the team and things like that. Am I imagining that, or am I going mad, Stephen and David?
No, there's a project cost, obviously. There's a cost to this project of actually managing it. And we've always accepted as well that we would pay West Berks project costs because them helping us to leave. I think we accepted from the start that we should pay for that. So there are costs to this, obviously, and we allocated 250 this year and 250 next year, but haven't put anything in for growth because we're hoping that as we go through next year and as we get localities and ASB and community safety to work more closely with the new service, the synergies will help to counteract that. I don't think there's any guarantees that there won't be costs, and I think I've got to be really careful because there may be, but we're working very, very hard to keep the costs to an absolute minimum. That's what I can tell you.
So it's the capital costs.
I get that this is not the right time to be asking any detailed questions about that, but so it could be a cost of getting on for $500,000, but then we'll be getting a much better service.
Yeah, and that's you're right that that's an allocation of monies for this year and next year to conclude the project. After which, we're hoping that there won't be a requirement for growth, but we don't know yet, and we'll look at that next year as the service comes into fruition. Yeah, I literally this week the accountants have been having a much closer look at the figures to see whether there is going to be a more cost implication or not, and so I'll have to wait until they conclude their work,
which we will see.
Thank you.
Which we will see in January.
There will no doubt as well be liability claims from West Berks, which we'll have to dispute and negotiate down. So there's that to take account of as well at some stage.
It's a special item. It's a review to as a capex option, as it were. Such a special item, budgetary review, and sometimes you need to spend the money to save the money, as it were. So that makes sense. David, Stephen, Bill, thank you very much for this evening. I know it was a long wait, but this is an important item. Once again, my thanks to the staff for keeping going, and with the process, and my request to them is those that do choose to come across to us, let's make the 2P process as simple as possible for everyone, because I think they'd appreciate it most of all, because I know how complex it can be sitting on other outside bodies. So, gentlemen, you may go and enjoy the rest of your evenings, or have a nightcap. For everyone here in the meeting room, we have got one more thing to go through, and then we are done.
Thank you, John.
So thank you very much, gentlemen, and speak to you soon. So the final item is basically looking at the work programme. We have got the extraordinary meeting in November.
Sorry to stop you. I had another question for Graham and John, which I forgot to ask.
Let's write it down and send it to them.
Because it got lost in my paper. I wanted to know what you actually think about it, because I didn't attend the training session for this. I had some other meetings that I had to attend to. But I've been told that the person who was taking the training was suggesting that we should be scrutinising council-owned companies as an overview and scrutiny committee, and we're not doing that, are we?
Not sure where.
So it's on the long list of work programme items, and it was a desire last year to crack on with that as a result of having to look at the COVID response and various things like that. It's been put to the back of the queue a little bit, but it is still on the work programme, and if that is something members do want to schedule in, possibly for this year, but maybe try and make it a priority for the next municipal year's work programme, then that's something we can look at.
Yeah, because it was definitely on the work programme. I just couldn't remember what it was because I haven't got the master list in front of me. But yes, that was covered off on the training, you're right, Clive. the aspect, and that really, well, there is a question. If you've got a question for John and Graham, email it to Callum and we'll do it. That one was very much more to me in regards to the chair. But moving on, on the 3rd of November, we've got the medium-term financial plan. I believe that's adult services. Yeah, adults and children, which, to be perfectly frank, that will be the bulk of the evening. Yes, update on that one as well, Callum, please.
So, the chairman's had a briefing with officers about a couple of different items. So for the 3rd of November, we're planning to have an interim update on what is still at the moment being referred to as the BME Forum, which will likely have its name changed at some point in the future. So that update will be brief. It won't be detailed at all. It will just be work that's gone on to now and sort of the visions for the future, with the aim to have a more substantive update sort of in March, once hopefully the forum is set up and is underway. So I think officers said that they're hoping to get it to the 3rd, but they don't want to bring an update if it isn't ready. So that's the crucial thing.
There is a consultation aspect that needs to happen first before that comes to us. The communication and everything like that needs to be done and done correctly before to us, and that's when we can start to look into it. But there's no point in us looking at something where we haven't announced what we're doing yet at that point, because there is nothing for us to overview at that point. So moving on to the 24th, we continue the medium-term financial plan. The overgrown pavements update will also be in there. Yes, because we also had a meeting on that one as well.
Yeah, so the overgrown pavements, again, that the chairman's had a briefing with officers, and it was felt that whilst that item is obviously it in and of itself, it's a big item, it would be more useful to look at the whole aspect of how the council manages its contracts. So we'll look at street cleansing. I can't remember the other ones. It was highways, street cleansing.
Street cleansing, and what I refer to as rival paths. So
yeah,
basically all the little link routes that we have between our estates, for example, and basically how we monitor them, how we can be more proactive around them, and basically rather than it being it's been reported because it's overgrown, what is the step after that has been reported to basically prevent it being completely overgrown and needing reporting again, which was the intention that I got from the meeting last time. That's the question.
Yeah, so all of the aspects will be covered in that, but also members will be given more scope to look at how the council manages all of its contracts, and to make sure we're not just looking at one specific issue, we're looking at the whole process essentially.
Yep. We then go into December with the medium-term financial plan. We've got the arts and culture strategy update, which I think will be something a little more interesting than finances, so that we can actually have something to look forward to in the Christmas period. And then finally into January, we get the parking strategy. Yes, Paul?
Thank you, Guy. 5th of January is a very good timing, actually. Oh, sheep's gone down there. In September 2019, this council approved a motion for the strategy to lower transport emissions. My understanding is that strategy, along with the electric vehicle strategy, is going to be ready for a public consultation soon after Christmas. I think it'd be very helpful if this committee looked at both of those on the 5th of January.
I think we're going to have to pencil that as a maybe, because I think it will all depend on the budget. We have got the emergency meeting scheduled just in case. Because if the budget, if we're still in debt for the budget, there's no way we will have time, considering we've got the parking strategy and then the update on the public services. I mean, we had similar length of items this evening in that regard, unless it could be grouped into parking management strategy and update. Could
I therefore suggest extra over meeting in February to take on that additional workload.
We have got one potentially penciled in, but let's because I thought we had a spare one in the back pocket because in case of the budget later in January. Swear we talked about it.
Yeah, I think I can go back and I can have a look at some dates and I'll talk to the officers about that.
That'd be good. Thank you.
Yeah, because it all depends on how things go over the next few months. Because if the budget is going to be as detailed as I fear it was last January, we wouldn't get to that in time. And if it's going out to public consultation in January, depending on the length, then the end of March might be too late. So yeah, we need to explore that if that's possible. And then effectively in March, we've got now there is an item here on March that is the domestic abuse contract update. Yeah, there's been an update on that one that we need to make the committee aware of.
Yep. So as far as I'm aware, that particular update will still be coming to that committee because that's looking at the domestic abuse contract. Officers contacted me in the week to ask whether a separate item could actually be scheduled for your next meeting. And that was, let me just pull it up quickly. I'm conscious that we're about to run out of time in 3 minutes. So it's the new legislations and outlines that have to be agreed by the end of December. So the idea was to bring this to the meeting on the 3rd of November, but officers felt it was actually more appropriate if this could go to overview and scrutiny management in October to give officers more time then to take on feedback. Yeah, precisely. So that's going to a briefing with the vice chair who's standing in at the moment, the overview and scrutiny management committee, to hopefully get it on the agenda for October. And I think the idea will be to invite members of community and corporate to that for discussions as well. Obviously, you normally receive those updates to this committee, but just timings felt that it was more pertinent to send that to overview and scrutiny management, invite members along to be included in discussions.
And this is the role that management provides. Is effectively it's basically the overarching one that can take the items of most importance when required from us and basically help with our workload, which is I appear to have the most overworked on the ruddy calendar. So that was the request from that. So Shirley, I know this is a topic close to your heart, but we got 2 minutes.
Absolutely fine with that. I was going to say if we're looking for time and saving time and things, is one of the things that's in the process of being scheduled, burial grounds capacity and crematorium update. It occurs to me that when we last had a burial ground strategy, we were told that there was between 17 and 20 years capacity. So it occurs to me that what we perhaps should just have is a report on how the new crematorium is going and not the whole burial ground thing again. So that could be a very brief report from Nigel rather than his usual report.
I think, to be perfectly honest with that one, the crematorium update is very much a as note, because I think we need to know more about the project, but that's an actual live project, so we'll see that in due course. But you are correct, and it is because we tied it all together. That's why it's referred to that in that format. Conscious of time, does anyone have anything? Clive, be quick. Yes, if you've got a holiday. 24th of November. Well, we did set this last year. No, 18 months ago actually. So take it up with your town clerk. Does anyone else have anything? Right, if that's the case, we are bang on 10:30. So thank you very much this evening, everyone. We've got a lot of work to do. Thank you very much for those who attended on Teams and those of you who have watched this live on YouTube. I hope our dulcet tones have not put you to sleep. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening. Yeah, done.
Thank you, Guy.